everybody. Welcome back to iGaming Next Online, day 2. Super excited to be here for the first discussion of the day. I am here with Rahul Sood. He is the creator of Microsoft Ventures, the CEO of Unicorn. And Rahul, you have such an incredible history, such a rich history. I know you've spent a lot of time working with startup companies. You actually created your first company, I think it was in high school, Voodoo, and you sold it to HP. So lots of experience here that you're going to share with our audience. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and today, guys, our topic is what relationship marketing can do for you. So I think, Rahul, let's open up this discussion by talking about why companies in general don't really spend enough time and budget on relationship marketing. Oftentimes they're focusing on acquisition. Why is this a common problem that occurs?
Well, I mean, look, I think people never really thought about what relationship marketing was until they started to study companies like Apple, for example. You know, back in the day when Apple was in trouble, Steve Jobs got in front of his audience of fans and talked about, Microsoft coming in and investing in them, and that he would turn the company around. This is after Steve Jobs came back. And what people didn't realize is that Apple had fans, not just customers. They had evangelists that carried the company on their backs, even when the company was failing. And very few companies have figured that out. Tesla's figured it out. Tesla drivers love their cars, and they talk about them all the time, like they're salespeople for Tesla. There are companies that have, and there are companies that haven't. And I think those that have spend the time to build online profiles. Penn Gaming is an interesting one. Acquiring Barstool was very smart, I think. And having Dave Portnoy go out there and be sort of an evangelist and build his following. But at the same time, Barstool brand is a great way for them to attract new customers. So there's a lot of examples of it out there now, but still not enough. If you look at some of the big companies, like, we've talked about this before, but if you look at HP, for example, what do they represent? Like, who do you think about when you think about HP? Nothing, right? And the same, like if you think about Microsoft, you think about Bill Gates, for example, or if you think about Tesla, it's Elon Musk, and even Apple, you think about Steve Jobs. But some companies just don't have a face; they don't have a community. They're soulless, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and if you think about Unicorn, you think about Rahul Sood. Perfect.
Hopefully over time, my partner gets involved and there's more people getting out there and speaking. But right now, they've given me that job, so yes. Yeah.
and actually, I forgot to mention to our audience that we will be taking questions in roughly 10 minutes or so. So please feel free to send those through as our discussion continues. And Rahul, I know I think I was actually reading an article about you, and when you speak with startups, you say the two things that they're missing, like you say, is the fan base and also a face of the company. So let's dig into those deeper. And also, I just wanted to say with Apple, my father, if you say to him, I don't like iPhones, I prefer Android, he gets upset, literally upset. So what Apple has done is amazing. And actually, my dad's speaking tomorrow, so hopefully you guys can join for that. But I want to know how you build a fan base. I mean, you can have a cool product and all of this, but what is the strategy for getting people involved and excited about a brand?
Yeah, look, I think it actually starts with a few things. Number one, it starts with a great product that people love and will get behind. So it has to be a really good product, number one. Number two is you have to have a team, like a culture that lives, eats, and breathes the product. Where they use it every day and they improve on it every day, that sort of thing. And then I think the next part is you have to have customers that love the product so much that they become evangelists, essentially. And so it's sort of a formula where you have a great product, you have a team culture, a tight culture, and then you have this customer base that's not just customers, but they're evangelists. And those three things will carry the brand on its back, essentially. The brand is the last thing you should think about, because the brand is, most startups, that's the first thing they think about is, what does the brand look like? What does it stand for? But they really should be thinking about the customer and the product and the team culture, what they want to build. And when they do that, the brand sort of forms itself.
Interesting. And I know that you've told me that when you put together the whole idea for Unicorn, that the brand obviously is a big thing, but you were creating cool merchandise and all sorts of interesting things to get people excited about Unicorn. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Look in the gambling space, it's a tough space. It's a space where I, and I don't want to. I'm not here to take down any brands, but I'll just use a brand as an example. Like William Hill, for example, right? They're a very strong business. They have a good business. They've got sports books and different casinos and things like that. But like, when was the last time you saw someone wearing a William Hill hat, walking down the street? It's just not going to happen. And the same goes with a lot of the other brands in the space, because it's just not something that people think about. They think of the gambling brands as a company. It's like a utility. It's a necessity. Tabcorp in Australia is a big company, but nobody likes or loves Tabcorp. They just go there to place a bet on a football game or something, and then they walk out, or they do it online and they forget about it. But there's no loyalty in the gambling space to brands. There's no affinity. And when we started Unicorn, we said we want to change that. We want to build a brand that caters to a younger audience, that creates a very fun product, and we will engage that fan base where they are, rather than trying to bring them where we are, with products that we think that they'll love. And then over time, we'll create a brand that people will actually want to wear, and be a part of. And we have that now. We've developed a really cool brand that's synonymous with competitive video games and esports. And we definitely have a younger audience. Our average age of customer is 26 years old. And now we're taking a portion of our platform, and we built a commercial offering to offer other bookmakers to add to their sports books. But the cool thing is, it's branded, powered by Unicorn. And so we're bringing in this really cool esports like interface that's like a no-brainer interface for these people to integrate into their sports books, and hopefully we can help drive a younger audience to them as well. So
Very
yeah.
cool. And as you're talking, I mean, actually, Bodog back in the day did an awesome job with this. I still wear Bodog branded
Yeah.
merch.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. Really cool. And when you say creating a fan base, I mean, do you ever think about actually putting an event together to bring these fans into? I mean, now you can't really have physical events like that, but maybe virtual. I don't know. What kind
Yeah.
of ways can you get these guys together?
Well, we do run tournaments online. We've done a few in the past, and when we do, we integrate our odds feed and things like that into it. So we run tournaments on, like Twitch is the broadcast platform, but we have our own tournament platform that broadcasts across Twitch and other mediums. And it's not hard to run a tournament. We've got a software that lets us do brackets. We can put up a $50,000 prize pool, invite some of the top teams to come play over a 4-week period or whatever, and we can generate a lot of views that way. That's one way to engage people. Another thing that we do is, we also have different types of betting, not just betting on esports, but we have products where we bet on streamers. So we let our customers bet on streamers, and streamers have their own fan bases. And if you can watch Ninja, for example, streaming on Fortnite, and you can bet on him, that's pretty cool. And you can do that on Unicorn. And we created other products that are sort of 24/7 esports, even when there may not be an event, or there's a lull in an event. We have virtual esports that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then the other way that we build community is we created something where it's skill betting on your own skill, and it requires just your own skill, betting on yourself in a game that you love to play. So unlike other skill games that you've seen in casinos and stuff, the Unicorn platform allows you to play games like I don't know, League of Legends, and you get a set of odds on yourself, or betting markets on yourself, and you can just bet on yourself and go play a game. And that in its own right has created a pretty significant community for us of gamers. And then those gamers then turn around and will go place a bet on other products on the platform.
Yeah, very interesting. And when I was doing some research on relationship marketing before this conversation, I know that a lot of people say that companies that represent something positive, or they're doing some good work for the planet, or they're doing things like this, it's really appealing for customers, and they're proud to be spending their money or to be associated with a brand that is, doing things towards global warming, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. I don't know if you are involved in anything like this with Unicorn, or if you could speak on behalf of some of the bigger companies out there. How does this work with relationship marketing?
So if you talk about giving social good, that sort of thing,
Yeah,
yeah,
charity, this kind of
yeah.
stuff.
So, I think one of the best examples in our space, at least that I look to and I aspire to be like, is probably Bet365, and just looking at the work that Denise Coates does, just publicly.
Yeah.
She's pretty phenomenal. Let me just say,
Okay.
like, to take a business like this, which is really historically gambling is you can look at it in negative ways and that sort of thing, but she's really like turned it into, I don't know, like something royal or something, and she's done a damn good job of doing that, by giving back and things like that. We do the same thing in the esports community. So we run, we run tournaments. We invest in teams. We invest in in the community and things like that. But I think over time, as we become bigger, and we go to a bigger platform, there's a lot more that we can do and we should do. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I know that in Seattle we have quite a few big companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and it's important to build a brand and build relationships within big companies that you work for as well, because then someday you might go off and start your own business and this kind of thing. So can you talk about the importance maybe internally of
Yeah.
of building relationships and how that
Yeah.
helps
Look,
the future?
I mean, I'm in Seattle, and when you think about the companies that are based in Seattle, it's unbelievable. You've got companies like Starbucks, Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, Costco. All those companies are based here. They have their headquarters here. And then a whole bunch of biotech companies are headquartered here as well. Um, and just being inside a big organization like Microsoft is a really humbling experience, because quite honestly, yeah, I'd say like 99% of the people are smarter than me in the room, and just getting to meet people like that and build relationships with them over time, knowing that Microsoft is kind of a revolving door. Like, people go and they go start things. Some become very successful, some go back. And some go to Amazon, and vice versa. And having those relationships with people. I mean, I know I through my connections at Microsoft, I've got so many inroads to companies across the whole ecosystem that we can call and work with. And I can tell you that as a gambling company, these guys would never have spoken to us before, but we've got really, really good relationships internally, where they love what we do. They love sports betting. They love video games, betting on video games, that sort of thing. And you're going to see some really cool things from Unicorn, on in that space in the very near future. So, and that's because of the relationships that we've built.
Amazing. Does it also work? It's work in the online gambling industry too. If you're working for a huge operator, right? And you want to start your own thing, it always helps to have solid
Yes.
relationships. Very
Yes.
good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the U.S. market right now, in the regulated gambling market, there's a big focus on acquisition, lots of money spent on marketing, and I know some people say that this could lead to an eventual clampdown like we experienced here in the UK. But just wondering if there's a message you would want to send to these companies in the US as to why it's so important to focus on retention as well, and
Yeah.
relationships with customers instead of just acquisition.
I think it's important because, well, look, I've said this often, that COVID, the pandemic, is an oracle into the future, and it created shockwaves in the industry. Las Vegas is a prime example of, the shock that this pandemic created. And the reason I say that is, years ago, when the economy fell apart in 2008 ish. uh, Vegas was obviously hit hard, and they get hit the hardest first. And they basically said, never again. We're never going to have this happen again. So we're going to invest beyond just gambling to other areas, entertainment. We're going to get heavy into sports. They brought in the Raiders. They got the Golden Knights hockey team. They have an amazing soccer team. Like, they've done such an amazing job on sports. and they were doing great. There was more people going to Vegas every year than ever before in the history of Vegas. And then the pandemic hit, and boom, the whole thing shut down, and they got hit harder than they ever had before. And my argument to the operators is, why haven't you built a proper digital strategy, and kept relationships with your customers while they're in their homes, so that you can bring them back when they come to Vegas and you can engage them in different ways. And why is there a giant arena for esports and you can't gamble inside of it? It's just stupid questions like that. It's like, why don't you guys invest in this area? And for years we've been working with these casino operators to kind of invest in this area, and they've just gone very slow. And then when the pandemic hit, we started getting inundated with calls. But unfortunately, most of these companies furloughed 95% of their staff. They were worried about putting locks on the doors of the casinos, and they had never had this. They never had to lock the doors before, and this is a true story. So, it's crazy. So I think the pandemic has been a shocker for many companies, certainly in Las Vegas, and hopefully they come around and start to figure out that they need to start investing for the future and not just thinking about how do we save the slot machine business.
Yep. Yep. And I know that when you and I have had discussions, you've been saying that staying at home is a big deal now. I mean, even when the pandemic passes by us, this is going to be the way the life is headed in the future here. Just wondering, how this is kind of a big question, but how is this going to change the way that we do business in general? I mean, how do we have to focus differently?
Well, I think we just have to think. Well, first of all, it's going to change the real estate, how people work, and companies investing in real estate and that sort of thing. So working from home has to be like a normal thing. The other thing is, it's going to change just like different industries. Like, for example, the
Yeah.
restaurant industry is going to change, where it's like eat outdoors or takeout windows. I can see. I don't see me going into a dingy bar for a long time, right? But I could see myself walking to a takeout window and taking home, Thai food or something like that. I think a lot of things are going to change as a result of this, and even sports.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, when the future that I envisioned before this ever happened, of esports and sports, was sports and esports coming together, where you have physical sports meeting video games. And a good example of that is Zwift, the cycling game, where you hook up a trainer and or a treadmill, and you run, and you're playing a video game while you do it. It's unbelievable. And the same thing goes with people setting up at home golf simulators and that sort of thing. This is kind of where things are going, at least for the future of entertainment. And we'll see what happens. I mean, I hope that stadiums come back, and I hope audiences come back to stadiums, sooner than later. I don't think it's going to be that soon, but it'll eventually happen. But things are definitely going to be different. People are going to be more careful. They're going to wash their hands. They're probably not going to shake hands anymore, at least for some time to come. At least I don't see it happening. So
Yeah.
behaviors will change.
Yeah, and also I think some of us just realize some things are more convenient, right? It might be more convenient to work out in your house than to go
Yep.
to the gym.
Yep.
So we do have a question, but I don't entirely understand it. Um, it's quite sensitive to fraud or abuse. If the attendee could rephrase the question, I'll ask it. It says, "Sounds cool, Rahul, but quite sensitive to fraud or abuse." I don't know what that's referring to, but anyway, okay. So
Yeah.
since I don't know what that's referring to, or neither do you, any other closing thoughts that you would like to share with our audience about the importance of relationship marketing, or any message you want to send?
Yeah, look, I just think it's important for the CEO of the company to get out there and be visible, to take questions, and be openly accessible to people. I think that's definitely one thing. And in this space, it's kind of tough because you're in a regulated business. You have to be careful what you say, and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, I think it's important. I think a good example of this, as I mentioned before, was Penn Gaming, and their investment
Yes.
into Barstool is very smart. And I think building an online following and engaging your audience where they are is very, very important. and then having a digital strategy to go along with it. So if you have a good product that people can use while they're at home, then you probably have to worry less when your retail environment shuts down. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. And this was so much fun, Rahul. That's our time for today. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and enjoy the show, guys.
Thank you.
Ideas start with an impulse, a desire of a notion. That unstoppable urge to create something extraordinary. Get your project started. iPoint International. The future is now. The future is now. The future is now.
Welcome to iGaming Next. My name's Dylan Slaney. I'm the SVP of iGaming at SG Digital. Today, I want to take you through a journey about how we're using data and insight to really understand player experiences and player engagement in more depth. It's a part of the industry that's a real passion of mine. Fortunately, before I came to this industry, I spent 8 years at dunnhumby, one of the leading data science companies, where understanding customer was part of their DNA. And today at SG Digital, we're building out the talent, the team, and the processes to put the player at the heart of every decision that we make. And that process starts with understanding players, knowing what they like, why they play, when they play, their interactions, making every experience unique, whilst providing safety for players to play responsibly. Data and insight forms the backbone of many great businesses. We talk a lot about Netflix, about PlayStation, about Xbox, about the war that we're in for entertainment time and airtime from players. And those companies are all built on the simple foundation that if I know the content that people like and want to consume, I can not only create and build it, but also be the platform of choice for people to consume content of all different types. And we are competing in the broader entertainment industry. It's important we understand that and learn what is happening in these industries and take those learnings and really put them into execution within our own brilliant and much loved industry. Data and insight that players generate prevail through our organisation, not just for the standard business KPIs and performance metrics, but also part of our DNA on how we make all decisions. We want to go beyond the traditional use cases and really look deeper underneath what players are actually doing and the reasons why. How can we make the product experience even better? What content do players like and why? Who should we partner with to expand access to content for operators and players in different jurisdictions and markets? And how ultimately do we put the player at the heart of every decision to create a better entertainment experience for the players tomorrow than they have today? And why do we think we're in a position to do this? Well, we have an amazing asset. Close to 13.3 million players have played on our platform year to date, generating something like 26.4 billion game rounds. And you can see here, across different markets, we have a huge amount of players and a huge amount of rounds being generated, which give us a really unique data asset that we can create some really meaningful insights from. And every time a player plays, they create this digital footprint. Okay, they give us signals, they create timestamps, they create data points for us to use to really understand them in a better, more 360-degree approach. And that's what we're trying to engineer. Okay, take all these data points together to really understand player behaviour in a much more meaningful, richer way. And also these signals tell us when and why a player plays, and the identification of motivations. Okay, so why does somebody do something? Why does a player play that game but not that one? Why do they wager on that game but not this one? Okay, are really important things for us to understand. And it's these motivations that are really important to think to how we really take the industry forward, not just for business growth, but also to tackle things like responsible gaming and to create the right and unique experiences for every player. And this data, when it creates that digital footprint or DNA around what games players like, which ones they don't, which ones they play, which ones they never return to, okay, are all great signals for us to understand. And it's these billions of different combinations of these DNA profiles that we want to understand to drive better decisions centered on the player. And I'm going to show you some examples of how these DNA profiles are being used to really inform our decision making. We saw during COVID against one of our leading franchises, okay, a real substantial increase in player numbers. This wasn't driven by new releases of content or new distribution. It wasn't delivered by new operators coming onto our platform. What we saw for one of the first periods of time was that it was how players were interacting with these games through marketing campaigns being acquired by operators during the COVID period. We saw this not just on our own brands, but also across the broad breadth of brands that we can see on our platform. And this franchise's role changed during COVID, okay, to help acquire and retain new customers. It has now created a new baseline for this franchise. We also know that players aren't the same everywhere. We know that because we've got that real unique size of our data asset. We can see from here that across UK and European markets, players play different games. Yes, some of this is skewed by our distribution, but 12 million players is a pretty good sample size that I think any of us would like to get our hands on. It also points to areas where we can find unique content. So here in Italy, for example, something like 22% of the volume that we're seeing is through bespoke Italian-focused content, and also highlights gaps where partners might want to launch. And content in our industry is still king, and content is played globally, but we are seeing signs, perhaps due to the amount of content that players now have available, that they're acting well locally to different game types. And with open gaming, we are paying more attention to that than ever before. Even with some of our key franchises, okay, we can see differences. Here is a great example from one of our recent global gamer launches, Raging Rhino Rampage. On the left, we have a US operator where 71% of players had played the existing Raging Rhino game before trying the new, which is a great conversion rate, adding a new experience for those players that love that franchise. And overall, when we look at the game, it was 1 in 5 players that had played the previous game that went on to play the new game. So 4 in 5 players were actually new to the franchise. So a really kind of like great stat to, I think, really illustrate how we can reward players through creating new content, but also find new players and to extend the life of games and franchises within our industry. Monopoly, one of our key external franchises. We've had nearly 700,000 players play the franchise over the last 90 days. 70% of these players have also played other SG Digital content, and 50% have played content from our content partners. This gives us a real great insight into what games should come next for the Monopoly franchise. What do current players play? What new mechanics, what themes, what style of games? What other co-collaborations can we do? What other licensing opportunities like Monopoly Megaways might make sense? And players are telling us that through the signals that they leave every time that they play a game on our platform. And whilst we all want to think that players play one game and one brand, they don't. This is a great example of data from 2 jackpot brands, each with a family of titles. We have a cohort of 25% of players who love jackpots and are playing both brands. The other two cohorts like specific jackpot games from their favourite brand. So not every jackpot player is the same. Here we see those that really like jackpots, the mainstay of their play, playing games from different brands and enjoying that experience, and others that really like certain game types from certain brands, but really don't want to play any other jackpot game other than their favourite games or game families. And we also in the industry see a lot of one-time play. This is a selection of new game launches across our platform and markets. The challenge here is we have a lot of players who play once. They try games, okay, and then don't go on to play a second, third or fourth day, and that game doesn't come in their consideration set. This might be due to just the amount of content that's out in the market. Okay, we've seen a marked increase in the number of games that are now being offered for players to play globally. And this is a challenge that I think as an industry we've got to really understand around the amount of time that goes into not only producing a game but launching a game, when across a bunch of games, not just our games but also partner games as well, northwards of 70% of players are only playing the game on the first day and then moving on. Is that because there's too much content? Is that because we're not giving the games time? Is it because the games aren't right for the players? But we can see here, okay, to have nearly 3/4 of players only playing a game on the first day of launch or for one day is something that I think we need to understand in more detail. And we can't have a data and insights presentation without talking about mobile. We are a mobile-first industry. Interestingly, what we see is only 40% of players play actually on a mobile device, but it's when you get into bets placed that's really interesting. So while those players are playing on mobile and maybe also playing on desktop, 81% of bets that globally that we see are placed on a mobile device. I think we can truly say we are mobile first. And here, okay, that's when changes like iOS that are happening at the moment, we need to be mindful of that impact. Apple are a new regulator in our industry, and with that comes new challenges. Building games with a mobile-first mentality, capturing more in-game data, the perennial portrait versus landscape debate that we all have. All decisions that we can take when we truly analyse the signs and signals that players are telling us from the digital footprints they leave when they play our games. And regulation. One of the key use cases today that we want to understand and really use our data and insight to make better decisions. How will regulatory change impact player engagement and behaviour? Well, we can look at certain markets. Okay, we've seen huge shifts in player behaviour in places like Sweden and Germany. We know that the UK is looking at different max and min bet levels, and we can see here from our data, okay, over 6 million players, being used to sort of like create the view that we can see here of rounds that are played at what sort of like state level, and start to really, make informed decisions. And we know that there's been some great data and analytics that's been provided already. We want to play a part in that, and we're more than happy to share these kind of like macro insights with anybody on the call. We strip out kind of like any operator or gameplay data. This is really just to give you a broader sense of maybe how the data that you're seeing is also resonated and is reflected in the broader market. And we believe here, if certain changes are made to min and max bet levels, that we could see, in excess of, a 20% impact on our industry in the UK. And regulation as industry, okay, we need to do a better job at using the combined data and insights that are generated to protect the most vulnerable players. We also know that millions of players worldwide play in our industry responsibly, and we need to reward and encourage that. Seeing these insights is a great way for the industry to collaborate better and protect the industry we and players love. The more we can get on the front foot of regulation, which is needed, okay, to protect the most vulnerable in our industry, the more informed we can be about the decisions we, not regulators, need to take. And data and insights are going to play a more pivotal role in this area than ever before. And just quickly, I want to share some insights on something that I talked about at last year's iGaming Next, okay, which was around Jackpot Wars. New innovation that's been launched in beta format with a few operators, and we're seeing how players are engaging with this new format. This product allowed players to go into a tournament to compete to win a jackpot prize, and we're seeing over 50% of players opt in with each tournament, and over 70 players competing in each one of those tournaments. And we're also seeing that 20% of Jackpot Wars players have also played one of our other jackpot games. Again, showing synergy and crossover here that helps to drive deeper player engagement. And while this is early days, it shows the innovation that we are seeing in other verticals, things that we have seen in peer-to-peer play with the likes of PlayStation and Xbox. You know, people playing with other people has a role to play in our industry, and it's again something through data and insight that we want to explore more over the coming months. And finally, there are many ways that today, across our industry, we are using data and insights to create better experiences for players. That will only increase over time. The more we understand about players' behaviour, the more we understand around the motivations, okay, the why and how different games are played by players, the different roles that they play in that consideration set, the more unique we can make these experiences and the more responsible we can be to help protect the most vulnerable players within our industry. Putting players at the heart of every decision is good for them and for our industry as a whole. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you all soon in person.
Welcome back to the studio, everyone, and welcome to day 2. We have a very exciting day ahead of us. It's a day dedicated to marketing-related topics, so we're looking forward to that.
Yes, marketing, fantastic topic today. Lots to talk about, that's for sure.
Lots to talk about, and a lot of interesting panel discussions and speakers are lined up. We've already heard some very interesting presentations, but we have a lot to look forward to. We have our TEDx speaker Marcus Tandler coming up, Betsson Group CEO Jesper Svensson is going to be talking as well in a panel. We have NetEnt CEO Gavin Hamilton and industry legend Robin Eric Reed and many more coming up today. So it's a very exciting day. The chat is still open, guys, so feel free to keep your comments and questions going. Pierre is responsible for the chat, so he's going to pick some questions and comments that we're going to highlight a bit later on. And today we also have 5 new poll questions. So we would love to hear what you guys think. So please go in and vote on the polls. And then we're going to reveal the results a bit later on this afternoon also. So yeah, I mean, the chat, Pierre, what's a typical good question for the chat if people at home are a bit unsure what to post on there?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I mean, we are monitoring the chat very closely, and most of the sessions are live today, so all the questions will be forwarded to the moderators or the speakers. And I mean, in terms of what questions we can ask, I mean, I think yesterday was one of the most fun questions we had was like, we were commenting on Jesper, one of the speakers, painting that he had behind him. It was a very sad painting. So we were speculating why his painting was so sad. I mean, we can really ask anything in this forum. And I think this is what makes the digital event so exciting, is that we can have this two-way communication with the speakers, which makes the whole event so much more engaging. So anything you can think of, all the questions, there's no dumb questions, anything is fine. Let's put everything in front of us and see what comes out of it.
Sounds great. Good plan. So next up, we have a panel discussion, very interesting panel discussion. The theme is how to attract and retain millennials. And I mean, myself being a millennial, you as well, Pierre, it's going to be quite interesting to hear from these senior profiles in the industry what they think is the right way to attract and retain millennials of today. So enjoy that, guys, and see you a bit later.
on how to attract and retain millennials. And it's really good to have with me some fantastic panelists today, Michael, Jesper, and Gavin. And while we might belong to the Gen X generation, I want to assure everyone at home that we definitely feel and most certainly look like somewhere between Gen Y and Gen X. So, we can definitely represent this discussion today, I feel. How are you guys doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Very good, very good. So as a starting point to this discussion today, I want to just kind of differentiate a little bit what we are talking about here today. Because in our prep call, we had a great prep call last week, and we dissected this topic a little bit to basically conclude that what we are talking about here today is the kind of the differences in consumer behavior between the digital and the analog generation. Like how does the consumer behavior differ between these two generation, both from a product level, which is why we have Gavin here today of NetEnt, but also from an operator level of which is represented by Jesper, of course. And at the same time, we have Michael Hansson, head of CEO of Interactive, who have conducted some really interesting research in this subject as well. But before we jump into the discussion, I want to remind everyone at home as well that we are live here as well. I am keeping a hawk eye on the chat at the moment. So if there's any interesting comments or questions popping up, I will make sure to grill our panelists. So let's jump in to it. Michael, I want to start with you. Just like I mentioned recently now, you have conducted some quite interesting research through Interactive, which is obviously your company, which is focusing on reactivation. And I'd love this for you to present your conclusions to your research a little bit on this topic, because it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just to put it a bit in context here, I mean, we obviously talk to thousands of customers or players each day. So obviously this has given us the opportunity to actually gather information and to share it with our operator partners and also to the industry. So that's what we're going to do more, in the coming years now, because we feel that that's something that we really can learn more about our customers and our players. And just a starting point, what I think is important to start with is to actually, when it comes to communication, what we have seen when we talk to players is that everyone, no matter old or young, wants to somehow communicate either via email or SMS or via phone. They want to, 90% say they actually want to be updated and get updates and offers from their operator. And I think that's really interesting. Actually 90% want to get offers and updates from their supplier. So I think that's important as a starting point. And that, to me, was more than I expected, honestly. And like 12% want to get information and updates weekly. And I think weekly or more often. And 78% want to get it at least monthly. So I think that's numbers that surprised me, because people actually, when we started this company, people were worried, do people even want to be contacted? But these numbers really show that people no matter via phone or SMS or email, people want to be contacted by their operator. But here comes a big difference then between millennials, Gen Zs, and older people like me, that I might not require a personalization. I got used to, when I grew up, that I'm communicated with in the fashion that the company wants to communicate with me. If they want to call me, I'm okay with that. If they want to email me, or I adjust and I adapt. Whereas what we have seen with millennials, and Jen said, is that they actually want you to adjust to them. So they want to be contacted the way they want to be contacted. And if you don't do it their way, they might not be so happy about it. And they also want to be contacted when they want to be contacted. So if you contact them the wrong time, you have to make better. You have to adjust and adapt. And that's something that we are seeing that we have to do now in the way we contact people, that we have to just adapt to them, contact them the way they want to be contacted, and when they want to be contacted. So that's a real big difference when it comes to the personal way that millennials and Gen Zs want to be contacted.
Yeah, Jesper, do you recognize this from Betsson's point of view? Is this something you agree with?
Yeah, I think this generation has more demands also because they are used to a certain way of interact with products and companies and so forth, right? So when you look at the difference between millennials and Gen X, I think when you're grown up in a more digital environment and you have some companies that really sets the preferences on e-commerce and digital. I mean, if you go to, let's say, Netflix, for example, you're expecting to get content that is tailored toward you and so forth. And if you don't get that in general from whichever product you're using online, there is a gap. And I think the millennials, they feel that more, obviously, than the older generation, though. So expectations are increasing, but that is also good. It's pushing the industry forward and drive us more and more towards a personalized experience.
Yeah, thank you, Jesper. I think it was Gavin in the prep call. You mentioned something very interesting of the new generation, which is that the new generation are prioritizing speed over trust. And as an example, you mentioned, for example, fintech companies like Revolut, which is completely taking over from the traditional banking world, for example, where a company like Revolut focuses on speed and less friction and so forth, whereas working with traditional banking is obviously perhaps more secure, but it's also less hassle. Can we draw any parallels to this phenomena into the iGaming industry, or is there anything we can learn from a company like Revolut and how consumers are interacting with these type of products?
I think, as I was saying when we spoke last week, when I started in the industry like 10 years ago on the operator side, trust was the #1 criteria of brand choice, right? So if you ask customers, why did you pick this brand? Why is it your most favorite brand? The answer was always trust. And you saw in those days the likes of Ladbrokes, William Hill, those guys won on trust because they had the high street presence, right? People say, even though I'm transferring my money to the internet, I can still go down my local branch and give out to the branch manager if things go wrong, right? So that trust part was huge. And I think what's happened in the meantime is that, it's no longer even the fact that the industry calls itself iGaming or e-gaming seems old-fashioned at this stage, right? Like there is a huge cohort of our customers who are digital-first customers, because the trust piece has been established with big brands like Netflix, or from a finance perspective, Revolut, or so trust becomes less of a criteria because they just trust the mode of transacting, right? So when we move away from that, actually the product piece becomes a lot more important from a selection criteria, right? Because I think trust becomes less of the primary driver and then becomes a hygiene factor. They still want to work with brands they trust, and it doesn't mean that that's not important. But topics such as speed of payment and also the tone of voice in which you communicate, instead of going back to 10 years ago where it used to be very important that you had to trust, the communications that you sent were very much built around making the player trust the environment that they're transacting in. I think, and Jesper, we spoke about this with the brand that you've launched recently, Yalla, like how the tonality of your marcoms has changed, how even the way in which people deposit has changed. Like, I don't think that brand could have succeeded 10 years ago because the industry is a different stage of evolution,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Jesper, can you follow up on that a little bit on your the launch of Jalla Casino, which was obviously a massive success for Betsson, and how you are specifically targeting a certain demographic with that brand?
Yeah, no, and what it really have taught us, and of course, we knew from running a range of brands, we have quite a big portfolio, but here we tailor the brand after an audience, and in particular a younger audience. And when we look at how we managed to attract this audience, it fits very well after what we were setting out to do. So the tone of voice is very different from this brand. It's speaking like a young person to young people, so to speak. So obviously the attractiveness in that segment has become really good for us, and it's working well. And it's not the type of tone of voice tonality we would use for a more established brand. If you take more, let's say, Nordic Bet, been around for a long period of time, very sports focused and so forth. So I think it again shows that you really can tailor your product and your offering in order to reach the audience that you set out for.
Mm. And do you see any difference then? Let's say, I mean, Betsson, Jesper, you've been at Betsson now for, what is it, like 8 years or something like that. Do you see any shifts in trend, let's say, from like 8 years ago when perhaps this kind of a trust was more important than speed at that time? Do you see this as a paradigm shift kind of thing?
I would say so, very much so, because if you go back in the days as well, there were fewer brands. Very few operators were doing multi-brand or having portfolios of brand. It was just standalone brands that were built up at that point. Nowadays, there are so many more brands in the market space, and most companies are having a portfolio of brands and are launching new brands all the time in order to capture new audiences in that. So it's a big change. I think you can still see some differences on a geographical level as well, not just on an age level. We see, if you take Sweden, for example, which is very digital when it comes to gaming, I would say it's 50% plus of all gaming in Sweden happens online. It's a big difference versus, for example, Italy, where it's hardly 10% in pre-COVID numbers, so to speak.
Yeah, the rest of the world is like 23% in total. Yeah.
Yes, and you can see, I mean, the trust factor from a brand perspective will always be there, but it's less important in a country than Sweden than it is in a country than Italy and so forth. So you need to obviously be very aware of also the local culture and where the country is on the digital scale, so to speak, and take that into account when you build your strategies.
Yeah, exactly, because certain demographics will have come further into this digital transformation than others, right? So in Sweden, the digital first generation, let's say, is older than what it is in Italy, which is kind of a little bit after in this digital transformation. So I think that's important to distinguish as well, right? It's not specifically, we're talking about age groups here. It's like the combination of the demographic and the age group.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting as well, though, just in terms of how that's changed, and so again, you go back 10 years, and any research or focus groups who did, the idea of a casino was something that was very James Bond-esque, right? And there was always table games led, and the slots were the things that you'd hide down the back, right? And the perception of it was cool, sophisticated. And I think, and I kind of remember Casumo coming along and going down much more entertainment-led and fun. And this was completely at odds with the older customers who saw themselves as who saw casinos as much more of a way to, it was more focused on customers who want to win. And I think what's changed as well, and you can see the way streaming has grown and the way even the product has evolved from the casino side, entertainment is becoming something that is far more at the focus of what these customers want to do, right? So I do think that, but it is interesting when you marry that up with what we're saying about Sweden, that a lot of those entertainment-led brands started first in Sweden were led by Swedish founders and has kind of spread throughout Europe. And I I think it is interesting to see even how the propositions have evolved over time, because go back 10 years and every casino was very much a dark themed and very table focused, and that just isn't the case anymore from a product perspective.
Yeah, true.
Gavin, sorry, Pierre, can I jump in?
Yes.
Because what Gavin just said here is very interesting, because you said that it's about fun and entertainment and not so much to win anymore, and that's especially that we focused on also asking these two demographics, millennials and Gen Zs, and then older people, why they play, and there was a big difference actually there, that the younger generation play equally for fun and to win, but the little bit older, they actually say that they actually play to win. That might be, that they don't want to admit that they think it's for fun, but nevertheless, that's their perception, right? And that would also then maybe chime into the fact that you're saying that new casinos pop up with different kind of themes and stuff. So that's more to the fun side, because you want to see new stuff, you want to have fun. But if you want to play, like you mentioned NordicBet, which we have been working with for like 10 years, and it's a really hardcore, great sports focus. And that's also something we saw in the surveys now, that the older generation say more. They have an uneven pie chart, so to say. So they have a very dominant sports side. Almost 50% say that, where do you get your most fun? They say sports. Whereas the younger generation have a much more diverse pie chart, where you have like Netflix 20 or 25%, you have online gaming 15%, you have sports 25%. So there is a difference also. I'm not saying sports is going away. I'm just saying sports is getting some tough competition from other products. So that's really rhymes with what you said there, Gavin. The entertainment versus to win factor.
You're getting compliments here in the chat, Michael, from Beatrice Orana. She's saying that you have some really interesting thoughts here on your statistics. You're kind of, I like how we are chiming in here. It's like I don't know if you guys saw the follow-up to the election last week, the James King of CNN. He was like the expert of the math, like he knew everything about everything. I like, Michael, how
he's amazing.
Yeah. I like how you have perfect knowledge in this demographics. But I actually want to follow up on this, Michael, with you, because have you seen any as well differences from the years that you have been building Interactive in the way that you reactivate customers? Did you have a great script that worked 10 years ago that maybe doesn't work right now? Or is it fairly the same, so to say, throughout the years?
Honestly, the script has never been, it's never been set in stone. It's always been, the person that works for us has to learn the basics, but then it's so much about listening. So it evolves, when you listen, you have to adjust and adapt. And I think if I see a difference, well, there is a difference between the more traditional sports brands and the newer, cooler, more fun brands that we actually might get this, get the customer back more easily on a more fun brand, because we can offer something extra or whatever. But when you get the customer back and you try to, show them what's going on the site and updates and stuff, and when you get them back to a more traditional site and they relive that experience, then they tend to stay very long, as opposed to when you have a more cool, fun brand, then the loyalty might not be as strong. So I think there's a difference there as well, which is obvious. If one group, the younger people, want to have more fun and jump around and try new things, obviously they can't be as loyal to everyone. Mm-hmm. So I think that's obvious, but that we see a difference there between customers and customers.
Yeah. We have a question here from Michael John Holden, who's asking, is the future of iGaming for millennials combining traditional gaming elements with modern mobile video gaming styles? And perhaps that's a question for Gavin, obviously on the product side.
So I've always been very wary of this because so it's absolutely clear it's seeped into all sorts of from loot boxes through to the way people play in video games, right? So I don't think it hasn't flowed the other way yet, right? So at the moment, gambling is spilling over into gaming, and I think regulators are very aware of this. But what it does mean is that the way people get educated about gambling is very different than when I was in a betting shop age 12, pretending to be 18, betting on the Grand National. It's a very different experience now. Now kids are experiencing gambling for the first time through playing FIFA, right? So I don't know how that necessarily plays out in the next 5 to 10 years, but there's some things that we can see, the stuff like Evolution are doing around game shows, etc. So bringing in casual elements and kind of, let's say, as I said, the move from the very traditional table focus to more the intersection between entertainment and gambling is happening and is already happening. But it's going to be very interesting to see that the generation now that first exposure, as I said, is loot boxes or betting on skins betting, and even how they gamble on that is very different too. So if you look at the most prominent form of roulette in the US is actually 14-number roulette betting on CSGO, right? And the margins on it are fantastic. If I can get roulette customers that are 20% margin, that's amazing. So I definitely think the player behavior will evolve, but I don't think I'm personally not very big on skill-based gambling as it currently exists today. I don't think that's what it's going to look like, but definitely the product will evolve.
Yeah, fair enough. So
we have
2 minutes left, Michael. 1.5 minutes actually. So quick comment.
Yeah. 10 seconds comment. I was surprised to see that so few, like we're talking a couple of percent, said that what they like to do the most is to play like video games, or like I thought that there would be bigger overlap between online gaming and that actually prefer to play some games and stuff, but I didn't see that. So just that comment regarding video and so on.
Thanks, Michael. Last super quick question for today. In the words of Jesper Kärrbrink, he says that the only people who think that they can know the future is the stock analysts. But we will try to predict the future here quickly. Jesper, 2030, what is like a typical, like how do you succeed as an operator for the next generation? You have 15 seconds.
Stock analysts are usually wrong. Than this year at least, though. So I think we are all in a very good spot. We are in the digital gaming industry. It's going to continue to grow, and we should be very glad that we are in such an amazing industry. Actually, it looks really good for us the coming years.
Great. And Gavin, on a product level, what is the hottest trend 2030?
2030. We're all going to be living on Mars, aren't we?
Betting on Mars.
Look, I think the developments in video streaming, the developments in batteries on devices and stuff, it means that I think the hyper real gambling experiences rather than simulated gambling experiences will become more of a thing, right? So I think that's a trend that we'll watch and be very meaningful in 2030.
Great, thank you. And Michael, last 10 seconds of you. Player behavior.
Yes, I think just adjust and adapt to your customer. That's the only thing.
That's the key to success. Guys, thank you so much for chiming in today. It's a pleasure. Let's do it again soon. I think this 25 minutes is too short for this topic, but it's been fantastic. And thank you everyone who participated in the chat as well. And I wish you all a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Hey, you have Richmond's new phone number?
Yep, it's... okay. No. I write everything down. I've got this great system, so you hold on one second. Let me just find it on my desk somewhere. Well...
You need a customer management tool that's searchable, accurate, and easy to share. You need Salesforce.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining today's session. My name is Alex Ursu, and today, together with our colleagues from iTechCard, we would like to take you through what we perceive is the advantage of using intelligent marketing and the ability to deliver the right player, to target the right players with the right message at the right time. My name is Alex Ursu. I've been covering the gaming industry for the past 5 years with Salesforce. And as mentioned, I am not alone today. Together with us, we have our colleagues from iTechCard. And our colleague Ekaterina Rusakovic would like to share more about the experience that iTechCard and Salesforce have had in this industry. So, Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So my name is Ekaterina, or Kate, which is much easier, and I'm responsible for the business development of Salesforce services at iTechCard. iTechCard is a custom software development company and a Salesforce Silver consulting partner. Although we are an international company with offices in the US, in the UK, Belarus, and Poland, we do a lot of business in the Mediterranean and especially in Malta, which almost automatically means that we are active in the iGaming sector. iTechCard helps iGaming companies with planning and execution of their digital transformation strategies. Back over to you, Alex.
Thank you very much, Kate. So, first things first, we would typically be with a very nice backdrop, as you can see all the events here, because we have been attending everything for the past 5 years. And I would say there's a huge shift of the maturization of this industry over the past years. So having our fair share of large scale events, we can definitely see this is now different because it's one of the first times that we are running these iGaming events virtually. And also we would like to thank the opportunity of Next2 to host us here. So as you can see, there is a huge experience. I have my own stories about going to Sigma, for example, or other events in Malta. Kate, I'm sure you have your own stories about going, for example, in the UK or Malta about all these things. But today is going to be mainly focused about what we have to share with you. And we hope our session is going to be extremely useful. The main focus today is going to be what do we see in iGaming as trends nowadays, and more specifically, what are the trends that we can see and best practices for the marketing industry in the iGaming part? Because we think nowadays, because we're talking about a huge shift, this is extremely, extremely important. So we're going to go first with iGaming. And talking about what is happening today, I would say there are 3 main points that are gathering information. So we're talking about the fact that there's an increasing number of brands coming into the business to target more players. We are talking about, at the same time, about more mergers and acquisitions of existing companies to make all things work. And then we're talking about even more branding and marketing to be able to target these player bases. However, the player behavior is now changing. And we're talking about almost 30% of gamblers that are actually not doing this for winning, they're doing this for fun. So we're talking about a wide competition without that much interest about the winning part. So then the question is, what type of a reality are we talking about? And what we are talking about right now is this is a war of attention, as we've seen this in the industry. It's about getting the right message delivered to the players and target them with the right experience. And this is how we can actually do this. How can we actually do this? Because we need to capture the attention. We need to make sure that the players are receiving what they perceive as being the right message. And we need to make sure that we get that very, very short span of attention on the channel of engagement at the right moment. And this exactly is what we're talking about. It's about the player experience, which is the new battleground in the war of attention. We're no longer talking about just having the right stakes or the right things. It's about actually being able to join up multiple channels. It's about being able to understand exactly what is the acquisition, making sure that we are actually collecting all the player data coming, for example, from the bonusing engine or for the player account management, and we can see what would be the benefits, and we can actually increase the productivity. So this whole battleground has so many areas, starting with data, with player engagement, with the acquisition, and with the productivity gains, because this is how things are changing right now. And again, we're not talking about just a gaming world. We're talking about the fact that Malta, from our point of view, is becoming the iGaming hub, because so many of the companies that we have been working with are based out of Malta. As Kate just mentioned, we have been working over the past years here to help these companies better connect with their customers. And I think it's also very useful, because Kate has been involved on so many of these projects, to hand it over to her so she can share a bit of more insights on this. So back to you, Kate.
Thank you, Alex. So as our topic today is how to target the right players with the right message at the right time, we can identify 3 strategic priorities for iGaming companies. The first one is definitely acquisition. Our main goal is to attract the right type of players. So we need to make sure that our acquisition efforts are focused on the most valuable players and the most valuable player segments. And we need to distinguish those segments correctly to guarantee that we are not targeting people, for example, I don't know, like myself, who are ready just to spend €5 in an online casino out of COVID-19 boredom, or in a preparation for a call with an iGaming company. But we need to target those who are ready to spend €5,000 one evening and play every day. So the second thing is engagement. Second strategic topic is engagement. All our communications with player must be personalized and frictionless. And I'll talk about more about it very soon. If the only thing which makes me excited is horse racing, you should not really offer me some online casino or special offers or football. Engaged customers will lead to higher customer lifetime value and better customer retention, which is our third topic. So retention. Keeping the right customers is valuable because their conversion rates are naturally higher without high acquisition costs. You probably all know that research, but according to Bain and Company research, a 5% increase of customer retention can easily lead to 25 to 95 increase in earnings, which basically fully justifies almost any customer retention effort. And all the strategic topics depend on data. The data is, and the way the data is captured, the data is analyzed, and it's used to create campaigns which are then automatically delivered to the right players at the right time. So while talking about frictionless and personalized omnichannel engagement, we also need to keep in mind that this is not something applied at a certain player lifecycle stage, like, for example, onboarding or monetization when the right offers are sent to you. The frictionless personalization starts with social ads or website visits and brings you through onboarding, engagement, loyalty and retention, and even gets you back on board if at a certain point of time you dropped off on the way. So the success formula and what we're all trying to achieve is here on the screen at the moment. Like more players, better conversion adoption, more money spent per player, more stickiness per player, and it all equals player lifetime value. Alex, back over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we talked about this and it looks very good. And as Kent mentioned, there's a lot of benefits that we can actually have here. But the reality is all of this is actually challenging. And by talking with thought leaders and gaming experts, we've seen and we can take apart several topics that are challenges in this industry right now for this specific pain of delivering the right message to the right player at the right time. So what we can see here as we're pulling this up on the screen is we can talk about issues that are relating, for example, with data. We're talking about data, issues that are relating with processes that should be automated. We're talking about proactive reaching out, so pulling and pushing communication to players. And also we're talking about the ability to be more agile and to basically be able to shift towards new changes, at the same time being able to shift culturally to integrate more brands into the business, because we were talking about mergers and acquisitions, and the fact that all of this, everything that we're talking about, needs to be orchestrated and automated. So these would be pain points that we've seen. We're talking about data, automation, personalization, and basically being able to cope with change in an agile way. So these are, let's say, the main challenges that we've seen. But then the question is, how can this be tackled? And throughout our experience, what we have seen is a 3-step process can be something that a company can do to enhance their capabilities and to improve the way to engage with their players. So we're talking about a 3-stage approach called renovate, evolve, and transcend, where what you're able to do is you're able to get from the most basic use cases to the more advanced ones by having this continuous adaptation and learning from the must-haves to basically being able to cover more complex models and then going deep into machine learning. And I think this is important because it can get you from the very, let's say, basic personalized sense that customers might be doing right now to their players, to the point where you're doing the real-time interaction, where you can actually think about if a player clicked on a specific banner, then it means they're interested in that specific game. So we should show them more information about this live. So we're talking about taking this from the basic stuff to the real deep analytical and the capabilities. And by having this 4 part of renovating the basic functionality, the must-haves, being able to evolve into having a full-blown platform vision, and then going deep into machine learning is how things are achieved from our point of view and from our experience. And then we're talking about how does this change? Because we can see improvements and how can customer experience improve iGaming companies. And there are 2 main areas that we focus on. We're talking about top-level revenue increase, and we're talking about bottom-line improvements. So when we're talking about top-level, top-line increase, we're actually talking about the ability to increase the volume of stakes, so more games played by a player. And then we're talking about increasing the stake itself. So the players are actually waging more on those specific games by having this engagement. So these are ways that we can actually improve the revenue. When we're talking about optimization of cost, the bottom line, we're talking about the ability to increase productivity, to reduce the number of resources managing this whole process, reduce the cost of player acquisition, because as Kate mentioned, by focusing more on retention or by understanding a segmented approach to customers, you reduce how much you're spending to acquire customers or to keep them entertained. And of course, we're talking about the regulation part as well, where you can reduce the penalties by making sure that you're segmenting and you're sending and you're not oversaturating communication to customers. And then as we discussed about this, I think it's time that we go into what does iGaming intelligent marketing mean? So what we are advocating right now, as we discussed, is again, in 3 layers, it's about recentering business itself around the player. That's how we've seen this player centricity being the point of success. By, for example, collecting all the data and creating the single source of truth about the player, understanding not only what they're spending, but understanding what they're looking at, understanding how they're engaging with us on communication. We basically put the players at the center. So we use the data as being the main golden record for us to define the communication. And then when it comes to the experience part, we go beyond the marketing bit that we've been used to. So we're not talking about delivering just a simple send to a customer. We're talking about creating an experience to that specific player to make sure that they are engaged with us. And what we have designed and what we have seen as a best practice in this industry when it comes to this whole experience is a player engagement platform. So this is where we would bring in all the data, everything that we know, if you like, because we have this know part here, where we can connect data that we know about our players, either from the known part, which can be CRM, player account management, customer service, or unknown data that we're collecting from a DMP, for example. We have the ability to connect multiple devices and understand what information we're getting from website and everything coming together. So we're creating this identity. We're then uploading the content. We're creating all the content that we're defining and delivering the right offer. And then we are orchestrating the player journey to make sure that we are sending this over. So we're talking about being able to design what the player experience would be, and then we're able to provide a right offer in real time. And we're able to do this by focusing on some multiple channels. So we're not only talking about website, we're talking about social media, we're talking about apps, email, or for example, a mobile app as well. So all these things can be channels of engagement that we can actually base the whole structure of understanding the data, creating the content, and then orchestrating the experience itself. So that's all nice, but I think what we go further when it comes to the engagement is how do we do this with the help of machine learning and artificial intelligence? So we are talking about being able to define algorithms to write machine-driven segmentation and create these journeys so that we enhance the engagement that players get. And this is, as a best practice, this is what we've learned that is sort of like a golden recipe, because it takes the experience a further step. We're not talking about the unique send to a customer based on a specific moment in their lifetime. We're talking about a continuous experience that we're providing to the players across all the areas of the business that they're focusing on. And as you can see here, of course, that's an older picture of myself when I had a bit more hair. But as you can see, the ethos that we have seen in the gaming industry is the ability to basically run a journey of a player across acquisition, engagement, retention, as we mentioned at the beginning, as Kate mentioned at the beginning, and the ability to manage this in a single point. So having the data unified so we can take all the inputs of all the campaigns that we're running here, I think is going to be crucial to be able to basically build out this whole seamless player experience across all these channels. And I think now it's going to be time to hand this back over to Kate, because we've talked about how this looks in real life and it's all fine and dandy, but I think it's also discussing about what is the strategic approach. So as we mentioned, having iTechHeart as a strategic partner to bring more insights about the strategy and the setup of such a platform. Kate, I'll hand it over to you so you can give us a bit of the secret sauce as well.
Thank you so much, Alex. So the main question, what do we need to make this all work? Here are 5 core steps to set up the system in accordance with our strategic goals, which we discussed at the beginning of that presentation. We've done this many times for different iGaming companies. So even if the business models are different, and in most cases they are different, in a nutshell, here is what we should do. Step 1, define data model and import data in the system. As I mentioned, data is a key, and the success of our strategic topics really depends on whether we take everything out of the data or not. Step 2, utilize data for segmentation. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Step 3, import content, then create messaging journey templates, and you're good to go and can start executing your campaigns. Looks simple. And although the implementation process is really not that complicated when it's executed by someone with a relevant experience, we shouldn't forget that the implementation is only a part of a wider process. So regardless of whether it's carried out by a partner, an external partner, or by an in-house team, we should not forget that it should be planned thoroughly. And the process usually starts with the selection of a vendor or a software which is the best fit for your goals. Usually as a step 2, a consulting partner is selected, or the other way around, vice versa. The consulting partner is selected first, and he's the one to advise on the best software. Regardless of the order, the implementation should be planned thoroughly, as I mentioned, and the roadmap should be created based on the business requirements. Ideally, you should have a rollout schedule with all the demos, and which is very important, you should know exactly when your business users are supposed to start testing the system. Being at the partner side and having seen many implementations, I always underline that there are 3 main factors, 3 parties really influencing the project success. The first one is the software, so the software provider. The second one is the consulting partner. And the third one, which is not less important, is the customer and their willingness to invest their time into the implementation. So it's especially crucial at steps 2 and 4 here, which are requirements analysis and user acceptance testing. So after the implementation, a group of business users usually starts testing a tool, and the final adjustments are made based on their feedback. And, which is not less important, we cannot consider the project as done and as delivered after the go live. We should not forget about the training, as our main idea is to guarantee 100% user adoption. So we cannot just leave people struggling with a system which they probably haven't ever seen before. So this is what Alex and I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for your attention and for your time. I hope that the session was useful, and both Alex and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have, so feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you very much, Kate, for the insights, and thank you all for sharing the time, having the time today to follow us in the session. more than happy to take any feedback and suggestions from your point of view. So feel free to reach out to both of us, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ideas start with an impulse. A desire of a notion. That unstoppable urge to create something extraordinary. Get your project started. iPoint International. The future is now. The future is now. The future is now.
Hello, everybody. And I hope that you are safe and well wherever you are joining us from today. Firstly, big thank you to the guys for inviting us along today. My name is Sam Brown. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Hero Gaming, and I'm honored to be hosting a discussion today with a couple of industry legends, successful entrepreneurs, and innovators in their own rights. Nick and Robin, welcome. How are you?
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Feeling good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. My first time in a studio, I didn't realize I was quite so shiny, but anyway.
You look great, Sam.
Thank you, thank you. So let's start off with some nice quick introductions. So Robin, why don't you kick us off? Give us your 30-second highlight reel.
Oh, I can do it quicker. I'm boring. 39 years old, living in Spain with my partner, a father, and been into iGaming for 15 years, doing everything from private to listed companies, leadership, product strategy, casino mostly.
Wow. Okay.
There you go.
51, living outside London with family, and a big history of online marketing. I used to work in Betfair. I headed up a department in Kindred. I set up a marketing agency that got sold. That was all good. After that exit, I then set up a crypto casino, and that did pretty good. I exited there. I then got into real estate. I still have a side project, as it were, in online gambling to do with gamer gamblers, which is a real frontier area. And yeah, and that's about it.
Very good. Well, thank you for those lightning intros. So just a bit of hygiene for those of you who are joining us today. We will be taking comments, so questions and comments. Please pass those through the chat, and they will be passed through to me here in the studio. I cannot guarantee that we will get a chance to answer all of these questions during the session today. However, the ones that we don't, we will obviously endeavour to respond afterwards to you online. So, without further ado, today we're here to discuss innovation and specifically radical versus incremental innovation, and of course relating to the gaming industry. So, to kick this off, how about some definitions? So, Nick, why don't you start us off with what does radical innovation mean to you, and perhaps give us some examples.
Okay, well, it's disruptive innovation. Not to be disruptive, it's just that sometimes innovations come along which change the world. So the iPhone and actually the innovation, let's say exchange betting was a massive innovation. So these things, they're a step change forward in how things are done. So the advent of online gambling was an enormous innovation, for example, obviously. And yeah, so another way of looking at it is, if you think about Peter Thiel, who's a billionaire entrepreneur, he talks a lot about 0 or 10x. So in other words, is that thing 10x better than before? If so, it has a chance of being disruptive, but in a positive way. And therefore, you could say that is a dramatic or radical innovation. You don't get that many radical innovations in gambling these days, as a general rule, I would say. The only places you get these kind of step change innovations are outside of regulated sectors, where you've got almost like a Darwinian ecosystem. So in other words, people try stuff out, it works, it doesn't work. You get rapid evolution, and then what survives can often evolve into being a clear winner. You had this with exchange betting, interestingly. So Flutter, there were a few exchange betting organizations in and around the time Betfair was launched, and Betfair became the first winner. They weren't necessarily the first exchange betting organization, for example. So that's my general take on, or my general definition of radical innovation. It changes something so fundamentally and spreads like wildfire because it's so much better than before. And one other big theme that I always think about when I think of innovation is that very often businesses kind of or industries find something that works and they just stick to it, like online gambling. And the world just gradually moves past that point until there's almost like a huge earthquake, and then something comes totally left field and everyone's just sideswiped by it. And then the incumbents just wonder what on earth happened to them. Now, this may or may not happen in gambling. It just all depends on regulation and strength of regulation, I suspect.
Okay. Very good. Robin, what about you? How do you share the same definition? Perhaps some other examples from your experiences?
Yeah, echo that. You mentioned two buzzwords, incremental innovation, and I guess disruptive innovation. I think incremental innovation is just what we all do every day. It is the gradual improvements to the business. I guess disruptive innovation is a bit more complex. I guess the definition is when you have an innovation that is so strong that it's creating a new space, a new value network that will eventually replace the space that was there. And it's true what Nick is saying, that we haven't had much of that disruptive innovation over the last 10, 15 years in iGaming, but there is some. And I actually brought with me a few examples and things that we can rest our eyes on. And I wanted to start with sort of looking at this one. And you have here a 60 million per month NGR gambling business. And I'll talk a little bit while we watch it. And what it is basically is players are coming into a gambling game where they're allowed to buy packs. And there is an RNG behind them that will give them randomized rewards, and some players that you get in FIFA loot packs are better than others, and you can sell these players in marketplaces. So it is essentially you buy in, you have a RNG and a random output, and you have a win. You can sell it, and this here is a $650 million business, the 60 million NGR business, and I think it is a good example of radical innovation. It created a space which caused a lot of other people to follow suit. I wanted to show a couple of other innovations which I have looked at lately. I have various sites in front of me, one called stake.com, and which is in the crypto space. You can create an account here, and you will then play with crypto. I won't log in now, but they have a range of cool stuff here, including stake originals. Let's have a look at a few of these games. In fact, let me show at another crypto site, which I think is even a better example. Here you have Gamdom, and you have a chat in the left-hand side. You have a level up system here, and look at this cool game here called Crash. It's a very simple game. Doing millions of euro and GR. It's a low entry game. You simply come in, you place a bet, and it is your job to click yourself out before the arrow crashes. So for the longer you dare to sit here, the more you win. Now you've lost all your money. If you'd clicked yourself out previously, then you would have won money. And you can see here it is social, people are betting, people are lining up, people are chatting, and I think it is a very good example of innovation in gambling. So is it incremental or is it radical innovation? And I would argue that it is the latter. And I'll stop sharing there and start talking a bit around the topic. And I think it is very important when we talk about these two concepts that we look at sort of the locally regulated space versus the international .com space. The locally regulated, I mean those who has a license, for instance, Sweden and UK. And I would argue that the job of those regulators is to control the marketplace and make it more socially responsible and collect taxes and so forth. And the point is that if you come radical innovation in these markets, something that has such an explosive value generating growth that other people has to follow suit or die, then I would argue that the regulators will pay special attention to this. My point is, if you're in the locally regulated space, you need to come with innovations that makes gambling inherently more fun and responsible. If you're in the international space, it's different. You aren't necessarily that regulated, and you can come with innovations that are more value driving in terms of monetary value. And the reason why I showed the examples of Gamdom and stake.com and so forth is that they are obviously in the crypto space, crypto being a radical innovation in itself. But for gambling, even more radical, I would say. People can play and get the instant deposits and withdrawals, much like we've seen with pay and play in Sweden, Finland, Holland, and so forth. And it works all across the world, and you can play rather anonymously. So it's a very good example of a disruptive innovation in gambling. And when it comes to the more regulated markets, I think FIFA loot boxes is a fantastic example of radical innovation.
Yeah, loot boxes are fascinating, and they're so pervasive. And for any parent dipping into the world of their children's gaming habits, their kids will come across loot boxes all the time, and it's an absolutely vast market that adults kind of don't really know about unless you're into gaming. And the other thing is, when I've looked at the whole the gamer gaming ecosystem, it is huge. There was some crazy stat saying that something like 1 billion people see themselves as gamers. You know, that they've gamed, that they like gaming. No, it's more like, I think from memory, I don't want to run too many numbers because obviously if I'm not 100% sure about it, but there is, at least 1 billion people on the planet, i.e. 15, 20% of the population game regularly, whether it's on a phone or on a computer or whatever. And there's this whole, and humans are wired to get a dopamine hit with a randomized event, because that's what we do. Our ancestors foraged for stuff If we didn't find anything, well, we keep looking, and that's the nature of gambling. Fundamentally, it's like those randomized hits that we get. And anyway, so the point with the gamer gambling ecosystem is that it's quite subdued at the moment. But if you remember a few years ago, we had skins gambling, which, for anyone who doesn't know, the way skins gambling worked is that a company called Valve had a marketplace for these things which were skins, i.e. you could skin a gun. And so you play a game in CSGO or something like that, and you could have a pink gun with red dots on it. Great. And it was just a personalization thing, but then it turned into a marketplace, and then the marketplace then turned into effectively a value exchange. And once a cryptocurrency value exchange in effect, and then numerous brands just popped out of nowhere, enabling people to gamble these skins. Like, who heard about that? But yet that market was maybe 10, 15 million users. It's just, and that's the thing about the internet. Those young people don't care about your local gambling regulator, and B, if something catches, it catches wildly. So that FIFA game, that company, the £650 million company, I'd never heard about that. I'd never seen it. And you're saying, what was the NGR on that?
No, so the game in itself, so the company in itself is actually Electronic Arts, and their revenue from loot boxes in FIFA is 650 million. And I just wanted to blatantly call it a gambling operator because that is what it is.
Totally is. Yeah, it totally is.
So my point is, if you look at what they've done, right, and I think this is very important when it comes to regulated markets, then they've contextualized gambling within the world of football. So what we are always talking about in terms of slots, if you're looking at slots or gambling specifically, is that in order to make it more socially responsible, we need to extend the game sessions, we need to make it more slow-paced, we need to put more emphasis on the monetainment aspect and so forth. And I just wanted to show everyone an example of that done really, really well, because your game sessions are all the matches you play in FIFA, and it is all the chatter you do with your friends. But in there is a little bit of excitement because they added a tad of gambling in there with the loot boxes, right? And they've done the same. You mentioned Counter-Strike Go, where they randomized dropped skins just for your time playing, and then you could go off and sell those or even gamble them at Gamdom or any other sites. And it's another example. But my point is that I think in a regulated market, if we're going to grow the cake, if the industry is going to grow as a whole, then the future is obviously to ensure that there is more fun games, like what you see with loot boxes in FIFA, where there is a slower pace and more entertainment going into the experience. And perhaps the future radical innovation in gambling will be somewhere in between the classical slot game and what you just saw with those loot boxes. Is definitely going that direction in those markets.
Yeah, I did a lot of research into this when I was putting together the model for this this project I was working on, or am working on, with gamer gambling. And there is very little market research in this, but the short of it, in summary, young people are into self-determination, i.e. they like to make a choice, and if they do something in a skilled way, then they create a better outcome for themselves, which is the foundation of gaming. So when you've got something that molds behavior so much or so assertively like gaming does, and then you say, okay, now you're going to have to learn this thing called slots. And talking to a friend of mine who is a slot developer, she was saying that it takes around 100 spins for people to gradually understand how this thing works, these things called slots. And they're just completely luck-based. There's zero skill. And so these young people just don't like that. And the tiny amount of market research that I'd seen had shown that, that slots were just not popular with young people. And then there was this whole thing about skill-based slots. Again, in Nevada, these were tested, and it was a fail. So if you think about the generations passing almost like a conveyor belt, and you think about an ecosystem building up pressure, the big question is there actually pressure building up? Well, if you look at iGaming, the iGaming news, and if you read the numbers, actually there isn't. iGaming's doing okay. So for as long as iGaming is doing fine, not a problem. But if, as people get older, as consumers basically fall off the other end of the conveyor belt, as it were, and these younger people come through and the market starts to dwindle, then that's when the pressure builds up. And then that's when the conditions are right for some massive disruptive input, which will just change everything. And it's arguable, again, the iPhone, exchange betting, online gambling, full stop, 15, 20 years ago, whenever it was, electric cars, etc. In my view, I think we're quite a long way from that moment. But I do think there's going to be there is a growing ecosystem of international gambling, i.e. gambling with no true regulation as such, that's just going to build and build and build and build. And governments will then catch up and they'll try and regulate. And I think a lot of international gambling will probably hook on, well, it'll obviously, its success will be based on how easily money can get into the system and get out of the system. So payment providers getting creative and circumventing local rules, that's a thing. And if that can happen, then yeah, international gambling will grow to the point where regulators will just go, this is not good, we're not happy. Governments will start enforcing more controls, a bit like they might do if Bitcoin gets too big. And then we end up with a kind of 1984 Big Brother scenario, which we're already getting into. Sorry to sound like someone from Anonymous.
But look, I think, Sam, a lot of people are sitting at home now watching this and seeing a question mark as to sort of, should I pursue incremental gambling? Should I pursue innovation? Should I pursue disruptive innovation? And perhaps that's a topic that we should discuss slightly. And I think if you look at this industry, it's been doing incredibly well simply by mostly pursuing incremental innovation. And everybody knows that good sound business is based on good strategy, good delta management, good current trading, just stay ahead of the curve, make sure that you innovate, that you pick up on what's going on, and you can still build a fantastic gambling business online by just doing that if you do it really, really well. I would argue, though, that if you see the sort of major value generation that has happened in the industry, then over the last few years, then there isn't too many examples of that beyond sort of mergers and acquisitions and scale advantages and classical sort of economical hacks. Those who has actually innovated and created something and who has achieved that growth, you can count them on one hand, but there is a few. And let's go back to the pay and play example. You had Ninja Casino growing with hundreds of % and showing the best marketing delta you could imagine simply by, removing the innovation came from Trustly, of course, in pay and pay, but it was operationalized through Ninja Casino and simply by making it easier to register, faster to get money out, and easier to KYC, and in itself incremental innovation, but some of them became disruptive, right? It led to a vast better player experience. You guys in Hero Gaming saw the same with Speedy Casino, and that's the type of value generation that is interesting, right? And the story to be learned is often that the companies who sits down and creates these sort of innovations, they don't start on a blank sheet and say, how are we going to disrupt the marketplace? They do incremental innovation until the stars align, right? And they suddenly stumble upon a disruptive innovation that creates a new space. And
or they reach a tipping point. So there's actually a term for this, which is aggregation of marginal gains. And you do the basics really well. You keep improving all those little things across the board, and then you reach that tipping point, which is an idea. So aggregation of marginal gains, popularized by the Sky cycling team, who looked at everything that their athletes did and just created tiny marginal gains across the board. And then those marginal gains all add up, and then they win Tour de France 2 or 3 times. Remarkable story. And then the tipping point, which is an idea popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, is this idea that things reach a point. So you get these marginal gains, they build up, and then and then the tipping point, and then it slides and goes. And that's where, as you say, Robin, that's where those disruptive changes kind of emerge. So yeah, and so that's why brands like Steak are super interesting to me, because they do the basics really well.
I absolutely agree, and it's a fantastic book, highly recommended. And so my point is just to the audience, at least the way I see things, is that if you're in those locally regulated spaces, then keep in mind that those aggregations takes time, and you need to decide on the direction you want to go in. Then you'll get better and better at it, and ultimately, hopefully, you'll reach some sort of disruptive innovation. And perhaps what I showed you is an example of the case: really immersive content, really gamified content, really compelling entertainment, and so forth. Perhaps there's other ways to go, like the postcode lottery is a good example of radical innovation in the regulated space, I think, using community, using cause marketing, and so forth. If you're in the international space, I would argue that the way the world is heading, you should look into more of the type of businesses that I just showed, because over time, I think it is moving in that direction. And there's a whole world out there you need to learn compared to sort of the classical business that used to be around Malta and European casino and sports betting. So yeah, it will take time to learn it.
Arguably, Robert, you could say that if you're running a business and you're doing okay, so you're out of the red zone, i.e. you've got enough spare cash to reinvest some money and to just make a decision. So what I would do if it was me, it isn't me anymore. Well, it might be. It depends on this other thing I'm working on. But I would take a 10-year view. And then from that 10-year view, I would think like a investment capitalist, i.e. an investor. So an investor never puts more than a certain amount of their cash into one bet. So you diversify your bets. And you know very well that things like customer service, most brands or many brands just have customer service as a thing. But actually, if you look carefully at I think from memory, video slots was quite good in customer service. Bet365, it's just hygiene. It's boring, but it's hygiene. It's great hygiene. So part of your portfolio of bets could go into, okay, let's improve customer service, et cetera. And then let's improve the site speed, et cetera. And maybe 10% of your betting money, inverted commas, could go into just something really wild that is kind of left field, but it's sort of in the zone. So if it works, you could roll it into the main project you're doing. So we did this with my casino. We played around, we experimented a lot, probably too much in reality. And we built a system based on the idea that there are thousands of slots, make it easier to find slots. The bet was that we would create a search system. So we did that, and it was a fail. And the weird thing was that when we bet on better customer services, just solving problems, better social proof, and all these other really mundane things, actually that was what got things really going. So the trouble is, radical innovation is high risk.
Look, I think we also need to be a little bit audacious. And I remember when the account manager from Trustly came to me 1 year before I even heard about Ninja Casino, when I was the CEO at Gig, and said, we have this fantastic innovation based on PSD2 and what have you. And I looked at it and I was like, no, I'm not going to give away all my registrations to this payment provider. That was my initial thought. And so the point was, I was just pursuing incremental innovation, right? And I had this amazing opportunity of doing something that would really be value accretive to my company. And I was protective instead of being audacious. And therefore, I didn't spot the potential. And I think there is a lot of radical innovation around us. We just need to open up our mind, be audacious, and dare to grab it.
Gentlemen, we are unfortunately running out of time. Some fantastic discussions there. I think really kind of insightful for the audience to understand that, you know, both radical and incremental have their paths, and depending on the sort of markets and areas in which you operate, and of course your mentalities and your behaviors, both can be successful models, although carrying different levels of risk. I want to thank both of you for some, a really good discussion. Some really kind of thought-provoking ideas there. We didn't get a chance to answer the audience questions while online now, but we will endeavour to do so afterwards. So stay tuned for those responses. Again, a big thank you to everybody at iGaming Next for having us and for hosting a great discussion today. Thank you, of course, gentlemen, once again, and we hope that you all enjoy the rest of today's fantastic agenda. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Seymour Dragicevic, and I head up Playtech's BetBuddy team, which is our AI platform for responsible gambling. I also oversee Playtech's wider responsible gambling strategy. This is known as Playtech Protect, and I'm really pleased to be here today, particularly because this is the marketing day of the conference, and this wouldn't have been a relevant topic even if you go back 2-3 years, but it really shows how times have changed and how critical player engagement and responsible gambling has become in today's regulated iGaming markets. So what am I going to talk about today? So over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to briefly introduce our view on what player engagement is. I want to delve into the regulatory trends that are not only creating challenges, but also opportunities to build relevant player engagement in gaming, and also wrap up by sharing with you some data on some of the techniques that we think are working better than others when it comes to player engagement and responsible gambling. Okay, so what is player engagement? Well, it's a number of things. It's automation. So it's about automating your CRM activities so that they can be easily managed in one place. And it's about tracking real-time player behaviors and defining the right moments to tailor activities within those campaigns. Engagement is about segmentation. So segmenting your players based on your choice of criteria and being able to integrate your player engagement platform with AI models is an important requirement. So you can engage effectively across different use cases. Engagement is about communication. So it's about communicating with players at the optimum times and managing the full CRM lifecycle, whether that's the full online channel or offline channel. And engagement's about rewarding. So it's about leveraging the full suite of incentives and rewards. And these can include everything from bonuses, free plays, promotions, and loyalty, and also content as well, unique, relevant content that we push to our players. So engagement covers a lot of these areas. Now, what is it about these powerful marketing and engagement tools that makes them so relevant from a sort of compliance perspective today in regulated markets? Well, we're currently in a large melting pot of regulations that are throwing up major challenges for the gambling industry. And these cover regulation, product and marketing, and policy. And let's delve into a couple of these. So COVID-19 has brought in place some major restrictions. In some jurisdictions, online gambling is banned. Others have seen restrictions on advertising and depositing. We're seeing a huge focus in some markets on affordability, risk detection, and customer interactions, specifically in the largest regulated iGaming market in Europe and the UK. From a product and marketing perspective, we have witnessed some fairly draconian measures in some markets. The largest regulated gambling market is Italy, and advertising is banned. If you look at the UK, we're beginning to see some product restrictions put in place in specific verticals like online slots with regards to speed of play, and also some of the game mechanics as well. And from a policy perspective, you'll never take the politics out of gambling, but we should try and contain it. And there's this shift to this public health approach. So these are policies that are put in place that protect all of the entire population from gambling-related harms. Now, if we think about these regulatory trends, they're having a major impact in the short term. And unfortunately for the industry, some of these draconian measures are often easy to implement. They grab the headlines, but they don't always help the at-risk gamblers. If you, for example, let's pick a regulated market in Europe, France. Online casino is a banned vertical, and evidence from the regulator and its advisors suggests that it's a problematic vertical. However, if you look at the problem gambling prevalence in France, you'll see a disproportionate number of problem gamblers playing online casino on unregulated sites. So a lot of these one-size-fits-all measures have unintended consequences as well. However, amongst all of the challenges, there are some opportunities. For the industry, they're hard to implement. Unfortunately, they don't always make the headlines, but actually we see promise to help at-risk gamblers. And I'm going to particularly focus on player engagement. So affordability, at-risk detection, and customer interactions provide the industry opportunities to meet these regulations, but also increase relevant engagement with players as well. If we go through some of those pillars of engagement that I talked about earlier, I want to touch upon those in the context of responsible gambling. So if we think about segmentation, here we are thinking about segmenting players based on their risk profiles and specific behaviors, and building campaigns and interventions that can potentially help them make better choices. And in the couple of examples that I'll show you here, The first one is a player. We know through research that players don't want to be told that they're problem gamblers, but they want to have access to RG tools. So here's a way in which we can communicate with players who are increasing their deposits, don't have deposit limits in place, but we can point them to the deposit limit features in a more personalized way and help them to use those features. Also, there could be players who show different behavioral risk markers. In this particular example, it could be someone who's increasing their time on device. And what we want to try and do is help them take a natural break in play. And this particular example would work well in retail, actually, because we're trying to take the person away from the machine so they can have a break. So these are some examples where, rather than the one-size-fits-all, where what we're trying to do is zero in on those segmented risk behaviors and put in place an intervention in real time that can help the player make a better decision. If we look at communication, there's a lot of focus on communicating with players when they onboard. So we want to ensure they are who they are. We want to do an age verification check. And if they start depositing above certain amounts, we want to ensure that they have sufficient source of funds and wealth to be able to gamble at that level. However, what often happens is once those checks are happened, you get less communication with players. But by looking at those patterns of play, and in this particular example, someone may have passed all those checks, but they could be on a loss chasing streak. We have an opportunity to engage and intervene with them and ask them if they're enjoying their gambling, because gambling is ultimately an entertainment activity. And with this particular use case, we can have a conversation with them. We can have a personal conversation with one of our customer services representatives. We can push them down a different route. They can access other tools and assets that can help them address the fact that they're not enjoying their play. So it's important that we communicate in a personalized way, but also in a relevant way and in a timely way, rather than just doing it at one point and then forgetting about those elements of communication. And the final example I'll show you is around incentivization and rewards. And it's in the past, it's been the industry's kind of looked at responsible gambling as a separate part of the gaming experience. So what we want to do is make it a normal part. And in this particular example, we know through gamification that there are great opportunities to reward players that engage with the traditional gambling products. In this particular example, it's sports betting and engaging with different products. But why can't we also reward players and give them incentives to use the RG tools as well? So if somebody was to set a deposit limit, a sensible deposit limit, that and they can keep to that within a period of time without changing it, you can give them a suitable reward. So the tools and the platforms and the techniques that we use that are so successful at engaging with our customers and getting them to use our products can also be used to meet the regulatory requirements. So what does the data tell us? So are these techniques effective? I want to talk about two things. So first, I want to introduce a study that was undertaken recently in Australia. So this is something that was published recently. I think it's very interesting. It was a study that used 4 online sports betting sites, and it was a study that contacted around 26,000 regular players. So these people had bet at least 5 times in the last 30 days. And what they would encourage to do was to set a deposit limit. What did the study tell us? Actually, only 0.71% of all of the customers who were contacted actually set a deposit limit within the 5 days of receiving the message. And if you look at the techniques as well, they split it into email and in-account messaging. The in-account messaging was more effective than email. But what I take from this is, for me, what feels a very, very low response rate to a responsible gambling campaign. What I want to contrast that with is some of the data that we're seeing with our own campaigns. So if you think about what I just presented in terms of real-time engagement, so targeted in-game responsible gambling messages, and if you think about segmentation, this time focused on how the players use the RG tools, on their session lengths and their BetBuddy risk ratings. I want to share with you the data of the results of these campaigns. So depending on the campaign objective and the timeframes in which we measure it, we are seeing uptake of around 8 to 15% of players responding to those requests to set a limit or to take a break. So it's really, it's over 20 times more effective than the one-size-fits-all blanket approach that we saw earlier. However, when these campaigns remain in place and they run for a period of months, inevitably we're seeing a decrease in their effectiveness to as low as 2% within 6 months. The other thing we've noticed as well is that different types of players will react differently to them. So the more engaged players in the casino vertical are much more likely to respond to these campaigns than some of the more casual players on the bingo vertical, for example. So again, thinking about not only the behaviors, but your product verticals, you'll tailor the responsible gambling campaigns to each of those different sets of customers. So to summarize, what do I take away from this? So the real-time engagement systems combined with player responsible gambling data is a very powerful and useful platform, not only to engage with customers in a relevant way, but also to meet those regulatory expectations. The personalization of RG messages, and when they're delivered in real time, is driving greater engagement and uptake. Having those capabilities is important. In terms of success rates, what I would say is if you're getting 10 to 15% success rates when you start with these campaigns, and I'm talking about personalized real-time campaigns, then I think that's a good place to be at. And then you can think about how you can incrementally improve those with ongoing monitoring and fine-tuning. The fine-tuning is really important. So these campaigns will wear off, they'll degrade unless you're constantly refreshing them. So think about not just the first behavior when you react or when you engage with your players. Think about other points of the customer journey. It could be on login, it could be in the cashier, it could be when they're spinning, it could be on logout. You could use some of the other channels as well. It could be SMS, it could even be email if it's done in a coordinated way. Think about how you can mix that up, and also the actual message content as well. Think about using video, think about using messages, think about different behaviors. And that's it, really. I hope that you guys found that useful. Very happy to connect with you after this session. Thank you.
Welcome back to the studio, guys. We're here to give you a little bit of an update regarding the chat, what's going on in the chat, and also some results of a few of the polls that you guys have voted on. Pierre, I'm going to hand over to you to talk a little bit about if there's any specific questions or fun comments that we want to highlight right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussions here in the chat, and I love that it was kind of a breakout conversation in the chat happening here about kind of the trends we see in esports in general. Our good friend Carolina Pelk, she brought up the fact that there's now in the latest study over 2.2 billion active gamers in the world. So this just tells us, of the future that we have ahead of us. I think, many of these gamers are obviously not of age yet, but within the next coming years, they will be the demographic that will rule the world more or less, the gamers. And then the question is then, how will we, as an iGaming industry, adapt to the culture changing when this generation grows up, of course. And we see a lot of operators already adjusting to this, offering esports betting and so forth. But this is it's such a new way of interacting with products and with this demographic. So it will be interesting to see who are able to kind of keep up with these trends. Yeah, also, Nutsa, another friend of ours, she talked about the the trends between how men and women are consuming gaming products as well. She estimated that there's a small fraction that of the gaming population that are women. I think she mentioned something like between 15 and 20% at the moment. And there was a little bit discussions on why that is and what type of games that women are consuming in comparison to men that I found interesting.
Very
as well.
interesting. Yeah.
Other than that, lots of questions in the chat. Really fun to see, and looking forward to see what else is going to come. We had some question here as well from Tanguy, who's asking if we are able to download these presentations that we saw now from Simo, for example, now during the Playtech presentation just now. And the answer to that question is that we will reach out to Simo and we'll see if he's willing to share his presentation. And if so, we'll be happy to distribute it, of course.
Yeah, perfect. And I think we have some polls that's starting to generate some results as well, right?
Yes. So guys, for those of you who are in the digital platform in Hopin at the moment, check out the polls that you have in the digital platform as well. So far, we are conducting a couple of polls today, and I'll read them now. They are basically, the first question is, are we finally at a point where the iGaming industry is doing enough to protect its players from self-harm, or do we still have more work in front of us? This is quite relevant to the discussion we just had now with Simo. And 67% says that we still have more work to do to protect our players, despite obviously the work that has been done last couple of years. Second question is the iGaming industry doing enough to develop its products to compete against the likes of Netflix and other entertainment platforms, which are competing for our customers' leisure time? Okay, and 81% said no. Yeah. We are not doing enough right now. And this will be interesting to see, of course, how these platforms, I mean, organizations like Netflix and others who are entering the market, obviously coming with massive budgets and with being able to capitalize on massive market share to kind of steal our leisure time. And the question is, will that start eating away from people's gaming habits as well? So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Third question was, in your organization, do you feel that player protection is being treated as a necessary evil or as a way to help legitimize the industry and thereby securing its future? And this is a positive answer, actually. 82% of the respondents said that their organizations are treating it as a way to legitimize the industry. Okay, and that is what we want, of course, and that is, but I've talked to a lot of the guests that I've had in my podcast have been echoing the same thing, that if we can solve player protection, then the future of the industry will look bright, you know?
Exactly.
So interesting.
Great.
Yeah, third, then the next question is there a perception problem from the public thinking that the iGaming operators aren't doing enough to protect their players? And as expected, 90% are voting yes. There is definitely a perception problem out there right now that the iGaming industry isn't really caring about player protection and so forth, and something perhaps we need to teach the industry about more.
Yeah.
And last question as well is, what do you believe in yourself, radical innovation or incremental innovation? I think this is a question that can have both answers. Perhaps sometimes you need incremental innovation, sometimes radical, and the voices are pretty split 50-50.
Very interesting. Those were the polls. Well, great, guys. We're going to be with you this afternoon again. But next up, we have Peter Ekmark, who's the CEO at Internet Viking, giving you a presentation. Enjoy that, guys. See you later.
Internet Vikings offer a proprietary technology that allows operators to retain brand search traffic. It is a fully hosted service. Our specialists will take care of everything, from domain procurement and link building to tracking the results, freeing you from all the headaches regarding its implementation. Secure online visibility of your brand with Internet Vikings. Your brand is worth it.
Welcome. I am Peter, or Peter Ekmark, CEO at Internet Vikings, and I would like to thank you for your interest in this webinar. Today, I'm going to talk about online brand protection. It's a topic I have become very passionate about. Having worked with major iGaming B2C brands in regulated markets and developing markets for almost 15 years, I have faced a multitude of digital marketing challenges. Traditional trademarking does not protect your brand from others' ability to use and rank on it. You need to secure your online brand visibility. And now is the time. 2020 is and has definitely been a new experience altogether. Uncertainty and resilience are words I would use to describe this year. But also growth. Who would have thought it possible back in March, April? Everything was completely gloom and dark. There are many contributing factors, of course. Land-based alternatives had to close, and sports events took a sudden halt. But the human quest to get entertained and excited did not, so we went online. As we can see at the chart behind me, the Google share price really represents the development throughout the year. In March, April, we saw a huge decline, and then the traffic and Google share price came back on track. It has actually jumped 20% year on year. And coincidentally, so has the traffic. So online traffic growth, that's good news for all of us providing our business online. This growth may be fortified, of course, if you complement it with above-the-line brand marketing investments. But there is a catch. You must not settle for just increasing your organic brand traffic. If you do not take proactive measures to protect your brand search, others will piggyback on your brand marketing investment and your traffic. As a result, you could end up paying CPAs for search traffic pertaining to your brand, or simply give away your business to your competitors. This is why you should consider brand protection to secure your online brand visibility. Your brand deserves it. The objective of brand protection is to increase your brand visibility and your brand search share. By deploying brand protection sites, you will increase your brand visibility and your ability to keep your brand search within your circle of control. The goal, of course, is to keep the traffic pertaining to your brand to yourself and to reduce the abilities of others piggybacking on it. Just imagine a potential customer that picks up your brand from a marketing campaign. As a result, he or she will Google your brand. What you have to consider now is what happens then. The customer will be presented a search engine result page, a SERP. Without brand protection, you will likely give away a big portion of that traffic that pertains to your brand. That is traffic that you made a marketing investment to get. However, if you have brand protection in place, you will not only have a bigger portion of the real estate on that search engine results page, you will also control more of the top ranking positions. Inevitably, this will increase your search share and your organic traffic. Your brand traffic belongs to you. You still feel confused? Why wouldn't a customer that searches for my brand end up at my site? That makes no sense. Well, to make it a bit more tangible, I would like to share a case study that Internet Vikings has researched. We chose a brand that I personally hold close at heart, Casumo. It could have been almost any other brand, and it's a very typical case. The market we assessed was Germany. So what you are seeing here is the local SERP, search engine results page, in Germany. If you would do the same search outside of Germany, it would look completely different. You have to keep in mind that search engine result pages are localized. Casumo does not have brand protection sites. So notice that with the exception of Trustpilot at position number 7, all the sites listed are actually affiliation sites. And this was generated by a search on the Casumo brand. That's the keyword here, Casumo. And 8 out of 10 is affiliation sites. That's a lot of real estate. It is also worth noting that the sites listed as number 4 actually offers a better bonus than Casumo itself. I'm sure a number of customers would choose that link for that specific reason. I know I would. But how is that even possible? It makes you wonder, is this something Casumo has approved and will even give away? Or is it just a matter of attracting that customer? As most of you know, Germany is also a market that will be regulated very soon. So please keep in mind that anyone active on that market will need to make sure that their brand is represented in compliance with the regulations. In this specific case, it means, for instance, that you can no longer mention live casino, which is not allowed under the regulation. Okay, taking a step further and digging more deep into the analytics, we take a closer look at the actual traffic distribution, the number of visitors for the Casumo brand search in Germany. We can see that Casumo retains 60% of the traffic, and that is mainly as a result of them ranking on top of the page, being number 1. However, it should also definitely be noted that the Casumo brand traffic is in a negative trend. That's not ideal. All the others, as you can see, with the green arrows are pointing upwards, meaning they are in a positive trend. So in analyzing the traffic data, we can see that Casumo is missing out on a considerable amount of traffic, 40% on the keyword Casumo. Remember, this is what we're talking about, their own brand. 40% of that traffic is lost. So if we translate this traffic into a hypothetical affiliation conversion funnel, we can estimate the monetary repercussion of the reduced brand search share for Casumo. In this case, we have estimated a 1.5% conversion rate for the new depositing customer or first-time depositor, whatever you choose to call it. This is affiliation conversion, and we have also estimated the German CPA at 250 euros. This means that 40% in lost traffic converts to, on a monthly basis, 430 lost customers or customers that were generated through an affiliate instead of going directly to Casumo. And that is, with a 250 euro CPA, 130,000 euros per month in CPA spend. So, if Casumo had implemented a brand protection strategy, they would have been able to retain this traffic themselves. And again, this is on the Casumo keyword, the Casumo brand. As the conversion on organic brand traffic is much higher, Casumo would not only save on the CPA spend, they would also most likely increase the conversion ratio. Don't forget again that we're talking about the Casumo brand, the Casumo keyword. That's the search traffic we are focusing on now. Affiliates will still contribute a lot as lead generators on other relevant keywords, on their products themselves. But the Casumo brand search share should belong to Casumo. Let's have a look at another case where brand protection actually was applied. So this is a real case, a real scenario that is in effect, and the actual outcome to date. Wunderino, a fairly well-known brand by now, a German market brand again to make the comparison realistic. They implemented brand protection as a core part of their brand marketing strategy early 2019. In the Wunderino case, the protection strategy was substantiated by some common factors that came into play. They made significant above-the-line brand marketing investments to get their fair traction in the market, of course. At the same time, they saw their brand search share declining, just like we saw Casumo brand search share decline previously. They also saw an interest, as an effect of the decline, of course, increasing affiliation costs. And they also actually had a problem with a fake, not fake news, fake product review getting a very high ranking. That obviously involved the keyword Wunderino in this case. So, a set of brand protection sites were launched, underpinned by a network of content sites residing on hand-picked local domains and specifically dedicated IP addresses. This is a huge project. Combined with the backlinking from the Wunderino main site, the brand protection site soon ranked on the top 5 Google search engine result pages positions for the Wunderino keyword, of course. 2 of those sites, they actually reached number 2 and the number 3 position. And remember, when you look at this search page, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are actually the most important positions because the results will be in a declining trend from under there. Top 10 is always the relevant, but top 5 is the most relevant. So the result speaks for themselves. Here you can see those 2 sites, the wunderinoonline.de or wunderino-bonusgeld.de. Sorry for my bad German. The result speaks for themselves. Ahead of implementing brand protection, Wunderino actually only retained 38% of the Wunderino brand search share. Remember Casumo, they retained 60%. This was low, 38%. But as a result of the brand protection strategy, Wunderino increased its brand search share to 78%, and subsequently increasing their organic conversion at related levels. But more importantly, the return on investment of their brand marketing also increased significantly, and that spend was huge. Wunderino is now the #1 online casino in Germany. Congratulations, Wunderino. So, to summarize, brand protection is a strategic measure. It's a long-term strategic measure aiming to retain all search traffic retaining to your brand. The objective of brand protection is to secure your online brand visibility. Brand protection is implemented with satellite sites linked to your brand, underpinned by a huge network of carefully selected content sites. Brand protection will increase your brand search share and secure more Google real estate. Your brand is worth protecting. Thank you so much for listening. Please do not hesitate by any means to contact myself or my team or any of my colleagues at Internet Vikings should you have any questions whatsoever. Please stay safe and be well. Thank you.
Sunny Sofia in Bulgaria. Nice to see you, Fredrik.
Beautiful to have you here. And everyone else is looking too. And so we're going to split this in 3 sections where we start with a really quick intro of ourselves, so you understand briefly who we are. Then we're going to dive in briefly again into the organization. We're actually working for the same company. And then we're diving into the actual nitty-gritty and the juice. So the search trend and what SEO is post-corona in November 2020 and what have happened in the space since. So what if you, Matthias, just give us a quick intro of who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Matthias Berghed. I'm from Sweden, and I've been working in the gambling industry for over a decade, mainly working with organic and search traffic. I started out working for an affiliate company, Catena Media, back in the days when it was a startup company. I did 4 years at Leo Vegas, and since 1.5 years back, I'm managing EMV Media with Fredrik.
Right, and that's me. And I do not come from the SEO part myself. That has only been part of my career the past 3 years. I'm a product guy and a marketing guy, of course, together with that. And I worked for Betsson Group, back when it was cool to work for Betsson in Malta, 2011, when you went into Pachaville and people were looking up for you for having a job at Betsson. And then I went back to Stockholm to work for Elk Studios and was one of the first employees there and took them to market, which was a fun journey. And then we were a few people, Matthias included, that decided that the big corporation life was not, there was so much more to life. So we decided to build our own company, which is EMV Media. And this company, so we built this company as a remote company from the very start. That was the main goal. That was the initial thought 2.5 years back, which has helped us a lot now during Corona, because we have never actually, there is quite a few of our employees that I still haven't met up until today that has been with us from the start, which is quite cool. And we're core SEO. SEO has always been the thing, and we all come from gambling. So gambling is just that. It just happened to be gambling, but SEO is actually what we're doing. Do you have anything to add about our beloved company?
Not really. We primarily work towards the Indian market. We've been live there since the start. We have a share of voice in India of roughly 20%. If you look at the casino vertical, Lotto 15%, and the sports vertical 5%. So mainly the things we're going to talk about today is based around the acquisition and data points we are able to analyze in the Indian market. Everything is in English. So obviously the search landscape and the different techniques and strategies that you are using might not be applicable for all markets, but that's what we're going to talk about today in short.
Yeah, and the overall thing that you could say about Corona as a whole, like if you're just zooming out and looking beyond our little bubble called the iGaming sphere, the big search trend and what changed was obviously, as so many most probably know, that it went from non-essential, both the way that more or less disappeared, and everything came directed to essential stores and that type of marketing. So obviously a few people are following the stocks. So there is some companies that is doing really well. And this was also reflected in the search landscape.
Yes. So basically, as Fredrik said, we were supposed to talk about the pre-COVID search trends. And you can obviously state that the searches has gone up due to the COVID. But we discussed this for a few weeks ago, and we both feel that it's our obligation to talk a little bit about the main core update that Google came out with in the beginning of May. So we sort of want to put some flavor in terms of that topic, what we have seen changed, what we have reviewed, what analysis we have done, the action points we have taken, and the results of that, basically. So that is sort of the topic of the discussion today. And maybe you, Fredrik, can explain a little bit more about how we've been able to review our assets and what analysis and strategies that we have used in order to stay on the top in India pre-COVID and the Google update.
So I think what this core update, which came hand in hand with COVID more or less, I think they were injected by the same people most probably, was that we saw, for example, we saw LinkedIn dropping positions on their own branded searches. So there was chaotic, like the search, SERP, as it always is with an update, it was all over the place. And we saw a lot of big partners, backlink partners, that started ranking above us. So we saw our own backlinks ranking higher than our own websites. So it's like, wait a minute, what is going on right now? So it was a bit chaotic, and it was like sitting and watching that data. And I know you, Matthias, you've been in the space for 10 years, and you were like, all right, it's just going to happen. Let's just sit down in the boat. I was there when Penguin happened at Catena, which I think most people in SEO have seen the Catena curve when Penguin happened. But this kind of shaking you up a little bit.
Yeah, I remember I was in Sweden back then, and when it started, we didn't really see anything on our own assets, but I think it took a week or two, and then we just lost 60 to 70% of our traffic. And also what's important to have in mind here when we talk about this is that we are obviously affiliates, that is our core business, but we are also fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 of the tier 1 operators as our partners, which means that we do SEO for them. So we do the on-page SEO, we help out with the off-page strategies as well, and we are also able to collect their data points so we can analyze them for ourselves. And something that really struck me with this update was the brand-related searches that affiliates historically has been able to steal, honestly, from the operators. But what we saw after this update was that Google literally killed those type of searches. So anyone who searched for bets on casino or Leo Vegas mobile casino, they won't see as many affiliates anymore. So that was also a big take that we did. And also, like you were mentioning, a lot of newspapers with a lot of authoritative were ranking above the real affiliates and the operators for a lot of keywords. So it felt like this update really flushed out all the tier 2 and tier 3 websites that honestly shouldn't really belong on the first page on Google. So that was our take based on the data that we had. Or do you feel like you want to add anything in terms of...
No, I just remember you saying when all this happened, like say, I think it was 2 weeks in or something, so started to stabilize. Like LinkedIn was back first on their own branded, for example. But when it starts to stabilize a little bit, you said that, guys, the search result looks great, but we're not there as we used to be. But it looks perfect. So the update was a good update.
Yeah.
And I think I remember that I had a big presentation in January because there was another update in mid-January where we spiked. Like that's when we took our company from being just us sitting and playing businessmen until it actually became something thanks to that update. But the opposite now with this update. So I had a big presentation in January on this, and my core message was that it's not enough to know SEO anymore. A lot of the big affiliates and the successful SEO entrepreneurs within our space have come from the SEO space coming into iGaming. But I think that is you have to know your market and you have to know the product because it's so much intent related. And Google managed to see that. If you actually speak with the audience and know the audience, like that's going to shine through. And we did position ourselves in India. So 50% of our company was based out of India at some point, and mainly like we were living on the street with the key. Like we managed to see from Google Analytics, like who is the guy, where did he live, and so on and so on. Like, all right, let's go there. And myself and a few other people, we lived there. So yeah, I think that's like, yeah.
So how do we, as a small affiliate company with a fraction of a marketing budget that obviously some of the giants out there are spending, in-house resources that we never ever will be able to compete with. How can we as the small guys being able to still continue to compete on the top 3-4 pages? What type of findings did we did? What updates did we do on our sites, and how do we work moving forward? Because we actually had to change, I wouldn't say the entire strategy, but we had, I think it was a 2 weeks workshop where we actually discussed the findings, what we need to do in terms of moving forward. And if you look at the results now, 6 months later, we are actually there, top 3-4 on all the main keywords. So the stuff that we have implemented, it has worked, but it's been a long way. And I think a key takeaway here for anyone who listened to this call is that it is possible. We have a budget of how much do we spend per month on acquisition?
Less than the competitors.
Less than the competitors, yes.
A single digits, I'll say, based on percentage.
So do you want to start with a few of the things that you are responsible for in terms of the implementation and the day-to-day
I have actually,
work?
I don't think I ever shared the way how I see our organization today, which kind of reflects on my belief of what is required. But like, we have become an editorial company. Like, we're a newspaper. That's basically what we are. And I empathized this early in on how, if we're going to work with off-page, this needs to reflect on how viral news are being spread online. And we need to kind of be smart and intelligent enough to show that we are leaving a similar footprint as a news story would get viral on the internet. So like, it's not enough just having that one super crispy link, but we actually need to have a good story. And this story needs to take new angles and new loops into other parts of the internet. And we need to create this little spread. I think it was a colleague of ours that put it out so nicely, that a brand, which Google says, brands is going to win the SERP. I've been saying that for years, but I think it's moving on to that more and more and more. And a brand has the part of all in the marketing mix. They have the paid, they have the earned, they have the share, they have the, what's the fourth? Owned? Yeah, owned. And that's the only one we have as an SEO affiliate. We're only getting links from other websites. Like, it's a very unnatural way to get citations on the internet. It's super easy for Google to see. It's like, oh, wait, here's one website. They're getting shit tons of in-links like that. And there's very little going on in other like social media citations and stuff. And we know that, like, even though we see this behavior, we also know that the do follow, the strong statical do follow links is still making most of the use. But I think all these other citations are, like, they're required as a hygiene factor to kind of check off, all right, so this is actually, they look like a brand, like the citation, Google see that this is actually a similar pattern to how the other brands are behaving. And I think that
Perhaps
takes me into the EAT.
Yeah, perhaps you, before we jump on the EAT, perhaps you briefly can explain a little bit about the process in terms of how we work with our native acquisition, because recently you've been on the hunt for new stars in our organization, and you managed to find a few really good journalists that actually has a iGaming background. So perhaps you can just shortly explain a little bit about the process of how we work when we build authority through native acquisition.
So the required assets for it, that like, we need to have a premium writers. We started out with cheap agencies. Like, first we started out with cheap agencies taking care of all the off-page and all the content. It's like, oh no, we need to own that part. No, we need to own that part. And all of a sudden now we're owning all the steps in this funnel. So we have skilled writers from the big magazines in our industry that knows the industry in and out. And we need to have news coming out from our industries, also speaking about the market we're in related to the products. There's so many elements in this piece of content, in this article, and we need to build quite a few per month. So like, how do you actually create a system to scale SEO when SEO goes into so much internet? You know, you can't spam, you can't throw shit on the internet anymore and expect great results. You will get that car, but that car will also go down like that. So if you want to have this steady decrease, which SEO is all about, then you better do your work properly and have a good system for it. But I want to speak about EAT, and we only have 5 more minutes.
I think we have 6 or 7. I looked at my phone. Maybe I started the timer. Yeah. So EAT stands for expertise, authoritiveness, and trust.
Right.
And when we spoke about that, we said, how should we, as this tiny affiliate, reflect those topics on our website? So we started to name drop authoritiveness people in the industry, like Carolina Pelk, for example. Can we maybe get in touch with her? She's like the casino guru. With her background, is there anyone else that we can get in touch with? And one of the things that we found out that was quite easy to implement is third-party reviews. So we have a Trustpilot account for all our properties. We have a Google My Business account for all our properties, and we encourage our users that we, by the way, communicate with through WhatsApp and Telegram to go in and write a review about our product if they felt that we were useful and helpful. And that has proven to be extremely successful, and with honestly no costs at all besides our own time sitting as a customer support agent. So I would say that that is one of my biggest findings in terms of how you can build at least some trust. And in general, if you look at affiliate properties and operator sites across the border, it's quite rare that you see this on any sites in the iGaming industry. It's more common in other industries, I would say.
Yeah. And I want to stay, I hear what you're saying, and you're pointing at the ecosystem. Like, who could have thought that being a good SEO would require like me sitting on daily basis and replying to Indian people on WhatsApp? But that way we can help incentivizing them to go and do Trustpilot reviews and therefore getting citations. You know, we're spreading stuff going on. So it's a part of it now to get a nice, decent spread. And I also wanted to just start off the EAT by saying that the only reason why we're sitting here today is because we took up the conversation about the EAT. We need to put our own names out there, right? Because our names is connected to companies on our LinkedIns and our previous company websites. So we have citations with our names out on internet where we are being mentioned. So if we can connect our name back to our own properties, then Google will see, so this guy is actually mentioned here. He was in this debate here. It was written about here. So we're like, it's not strong to follow links, but there is these small citations everywhere where we connecting it back to our own properties and therefore creating a World Wide Web.
Such a simple thing to just add your company name, a link to your LinkedIn profile, and who the person who actually owns the site is. And if you look at 90% of all the affiliates assets out there, most of them doesn't do that. And you're completely right. We told ourselves we need to get out and talk more and not be this shady guy working in the basement, creating content and building links. We won't receive any good results by doing that. So you're perfectly right.
And I mean, we saw it in the Medic update for the I don't know, both alternative medicine, but also a lot of pills website. This was August 2018, 17.
Yep.
Where they basically, you know, they took down all the websites we didn't have a real company connected to them. And I think gambling is up next. So you better be straight up and show your face. You can't hide behind the curtains anymore. Guys, we have 30 seconds left, so we need to close this loop. We haven't even started going in what I wanted to speak about. It was a quick but sweet. So I guess, get in contact with us on LinkedIn. You have our names, and we want to discuss this further.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Have a wonderful day, and I talk to you later, Fredrik.
Namaste.
Goodbye.
Hi there, my name is Isabella. I am B2B marketing manager working for BetConstruct. BetConstruct is a well-known iGaming company, a global award-winning technology and services provider for online and land-based gaming industry. What we stand for is our innovative and proven offerings to our partner operators and rich portfolio of products and services. We are more than 15 years in the industry, and we are constantly growing, providing our partners unbelievable opportunities for lifelong success. And today, I'm going to introduce you the latest innovation in BetConstruct portfolio, AI-powered voice assistant Huri. The interesting part is that we have already introduced you our product last year's iGaming Next event for the first time. But for today, we have decided to present Huri in a different way, to show how much we have been working on this product, constantly improving it and adding various interesting and engaging features to it. What's more, Huri is now not only AI-powered voice assistant, but also presented as an automated customer happiness. Let's see the new version of Huri. Just a little bit about the story behind. Huri's original name is taken from Armenian tale Amban Huri. It tells about a lazy girl who wouldn't make it in life without the help of kind creatures. Just like her, Huri needs some extra care from your side to be able to work. You have to train your assistant with carefully crafted answers so it can respond to your users and increase the level of your customers' happiness. Huri can be embedded in any website for automated customer support. After you embed Huri's widget on your website, users have an opportunity to open it and ask different questions. In case of sportsbook website, for example, they will be able to ask about its services and benefits. You can customize your answers using Huri's editor to add some images, change the text color, insert some links, emojis, and much more. You can also add follow-up actions for faster replies. In this new era in customer communication, it's highly valuable to have a customizable and unique assistant. This is why Huri can be renamed and restyled according to the company's needs. What is more, Huri is also betting and gaming assistant. It can assist players in placing bets, loading sports statistics, and navigating through the operator's website. By recognizing the user's voice, Huri interprets commands and performs the requested reactions. A user may ask, "How can I make a bet?" while another user can phrase the same question a bit differently. So Huri will collect all of these variations, analyze them, and group them by intent. Since the last time we met, we have added a cool new feature to Huri's admin dashboard. Now you don't need to train Huri alone. You have the opportunity to invite your team members so they can assist you. Soon, when Huri's new version arrives, you will be able to create teams with their relevant permissions. You can set up teams based on their specialties, such as translators, trainers, content writers, SEO analysts, etc. First, you will set relevant permissions, choosing the things each team can or cannot do. Those, when you invite new members into the workspace and set them to their relevant teams, they will be granted to pre-adjusted permissions. Huri will send them an invitation link to join. Huri grows just like a regular person, or even faster. This is the upcoming features that will be realized for Huri. Huri's special inbox will be a place where you will be able to access all the communication between the users and the assistant. With Huri's help, you'll be able to send event-based or rule-based messages to your users to greet them, to navigate them, to provide them additional information, or simply to make the website navigation more entertaining. Campaigns. You'll need something more than just the messages? Fine, Huri will have a special feature based on the UX flow of a user that will result in a final goal. We call this a campaign, which is a time-based process with a start date and end date and special rules. A campaign will guide the users with the help of messages, pop-ups, page takeovers, and top bars so they arrive to the final goal. I'm more than sure that the most interesting part is to train Huri. That's why there is a special offer crafted for you. You can test Huri during the East and West Expo Volume 2 that will take place at the beginning of December. The event will be virtual. However, the most advanced technologies will make it as real as possible. For this event, we will use our other innovative product named Panda MR platform. Just a few words about the virtual platform. Panda MR started with a small team of our VR enthusiasts with a big vision who decided to create a VR environment that could be used by different businesses and industries. Moving onwards, it won the most liked product at AWE USA 2018 and started working on a big project with even bigger vision to drive the new era of tech-enabled transformation, growth and sustainability for the global event industries. Empowered by virtual reality technologies and diverse tools, we help our partners hold their large-scale board meetings, exhibitions, conferences, and other events by passing geographical and time constraints, as well as give them a chance to invite participants from all over the world to the businesses and networking, experiencing those events from an exceptional standpoint. So, in-app communication in Panda MR is available via voice messaging, chat messaging, and video messaging as well. Also, you can create your own avatar with choosing hair color, hairstyle, outfit, and even different styles of glasses. Panda MR platform is available via desktop, Windows and macOS, and mobile version, iOS and Android. And also the software is available via VR headsets, Oculuses. To sum up, we would like to emphasize once again the importance of innovations, especially in these hard times of the pandemic. Let's gather together at the upcoming East and West event that will take place on December 8th and 9th and enjoy the combination of machines, technologies, and humans, gaining experience and saving resources as a result. Don't forget to test our Huri. Thank you.
Ideas start with an impulse, a desire of a notion. That unstoppable urge to create something extraordinary.